Welcome to the SRO E-Sport GT Series. We have got round 2 coming up for you today around the historic Spa Francorchamps circuit. Thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. My name is Jack Nichols. We've got David Addison, Ben Constanduris and John Watson with you to bring us all of the action about what we're going to see today. We've got 2 one-hour races coming up. The first is for our professional racing drivers, the real world drivers from the GT World Challenge powered by AWS, which will hopefully be getting underway later this year. And we have got the silver class as well, which is for our professional sim racers that are going to be head-to-head. Both have a 1-hour race around Spa, and we're really looking forward to it. As far as qualifying is concerned, it's been a very, very tight session out there. Coming into this race, though, the championship leader was Jordan Pepper, but he only qualified 27th on the grid. Ben Barnacote, second in the standings, is 22nd on the grid. So I think we're really going to see the pro championship mixed up today. We've got a new partner on board for this series, and it's a very cool initiative actually. David Perrell, who you may have seen racing in the GT World Challenge, he has set up a new driver coaching academy, and one of those drivers is Jean-Eric Verne, and he is going to be racing today for the Coach Dave Academy. Let's have a little bit of a look at what they do. So the Coach Dave Academy, if you want to get involved in sim racing, David is helping all sorts of drivers in the real world and now in the simulated world. As I say, we've got this race around Spa Francorchamps coming up. Very, very excited to see what unfolds. We'll take a look at qualifying in a little bit. But first, let's get a closer look at the Spa Francorchamps circuit itself. This is the Bentley track guide, the Fanatec Spa track guide with Bentley, and the driver is Andy Soucek.
Hello, this is Andy Soucek, driving for K-Pax Racing by SRO E-Sports in the Pro class, and this is an onboard lap around Spa.
Hello, this is Andy Soucek, and I'm going to take you around a lap in Spa Francorchamps. So here we are on the main straight, new pit lane, only up to 5th gear, braking at a 100-meter mark down to 1st gear, trying to nail the apex of the corner, being really close to the inside curb and wall. Nice smooth exit, 5th gear into Eau Rouge, facing now the most challenging corner I would say in the world, in 6th gear, flat out on the top into Radillon. Very nice line over there, as straight as you can, just not to lose any kph possible. Getting into the very hard braking zone into Les Combes, very difficult to nail the braking there, 265 kph. Really tricky on brakes, hitting the inside curb, also the curb on the left of the second part into Les Combes, trying to sacrifice a bit the exit for the third one. Hitting also the exit curb there, very deep braking here into Brussels, very tight corner. It's the slowest corner with the chicane of Spa Francorchamps. Once again sacrificing a bit the exit, using all the track possible, watching out here for track limits, as you always run wide and it's very easy to go wide there. Braking really close, if not on top of the curb, into Pouhon, very quick left-handed in 4th gear, trying to be on the throttle early, not to lose any speed. Very fast corner, 200 kph. Once again, in the limiter here, 5th gear into the Piff Path, last section of the track. Really important to keep the momentum here. A right-left chicane onto the exit curb once again, a bit of AstroTurf there, and very important here, Stavelot 1 and 2 to try and prepare the exit, because we have the very long straight line. This is a flat right-handed Stavelot, and we just want to carry as much speed as possible onto this very long straight line, where we have a famous corner of Blanchemont, using the green side of the track on the right, flat to the left. Quite incredible, the downforce of the Bentley here. Very hard braking into the bus stop chicane. Run a little bit wide on this lap, actually had to sacrifice the exit of the corner, which was not ideal. Still didn't lose too much time. All in all, a pretty good lap time. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.
Our track guide with Andy Soucek and the Bentley team. Let's bring in John Watson, 5 times Formula One Grand Prix winner, who will be with us as ever commentating. Watty, Spa, usually we're used to seeing these GT drivers race for 24 hours around here. A 1-hour sprint race is going to be a little bit different.
Well, Jack, they're going to have to certainly rethink what their approach to this 1-hour event is going to be. Of course, Spa 24 is the jewel in the crown of GT racing on a global platform. 7 kilometers, 4.3 miles, 19 turns. The thing that really makes Spa stand out to me is the wonderful, wonderful odors you get from cooking oil and French fries. Now, in a 1-hour race, they'll not have much time to think about that. But if you're driving in the 24-hour race, there are many occasions when you're driving at night time and you get a bit hungry, you would just give a little car.
Okay, do you get hungry in race cars? That's something I've never thought of.
You do. I mean, obviously, professional drivers, they've got their dietitians, they've got all the infrastructure around them to make sure that they eat correctly. Being racing drivers, they do like to sneak off and get a little bowl of French fries or whatever it is they want. You can have it with mayonnaise, you can have it with maybe a ketchup. It's your personal choice. Let's not focus too much on what drivers are going to be eating in this 1-hour race, because actually they will have only a very short window to get the job done. And Jack, what's interesting to me, Jordan Pepper drove sublimely at Silverstone, won the race easily. In fact, he was given the race when Ben Barnicoat and Crestone managed to hit each other, open the door for Jordan Pepper. But he's starting back, you mentioned, 27th on the grid. Now, there's partly a reason for that. It's a performance, a penalty, a weight penalty for success. So the Bentleys are having to carry an additional 25 kilograms of weight here this weekend. McLarens have also been penalized by 17 kilograms, AMGs by 10 kilograms. A lot of time lost. I don't know why the Bentleys are so off the pace, because it's a circuit that we know when you come to the 24-hour race, Bentleys have always been to the fore. They are a competitive car, and in particular here at Spa.
Yeah, indeed. So as far as qualifying is concerned, these were the last couple of minutes of it. We've also been joined by Ben Constanduras. Ben, as what he was saying, a real mix-up in the order, except maybe for Raffaele Marciello, 3rd in the championship in the Mercedes coming into this race, but he ended up 6th on the grid.
He's done a great job. Mercedes always so strong around the Spa Francorchamps circuit, and that kind of performance is mirrored in the game from real life, because this is so lifelike in the way that they've put the whole thing together. The balance of performance mirrors exactly what the SRO would put into a real life race. And actually, Marciello did actually have some success ballast added to the Mercedes because of his 3rd place at Silverstone, and yet still managed to get himself 6th on the grid. The car is consistent, it's well balanced. He should be a really good hot contender for the race.
Yeah, these were the final moments of qualifying then, and it was, as you can see on the left there, Lorenzo Marcucci in the Audi, who ended up qualifying on pole position ahead of Ivan Pereira in another Audi, and then Nicholas Hilbrand in the Ferrari, 3rd on the grid. And then we've got Fabrizio Crestani, who things started so well for him with a pole position last time out in Silverstone, but as what he alluded to, Ben, him and Barnicoat coming together and spoiling both of their days.
Absolutely, two McLarens as well. Not a particularly good way to start for McLaren. They had Barnicoat finishing 2nd, so they have balanced performance and success ballast in that car. And just imagine carrying that extra weight all the way, not only up Radiant and Eau Rouge, but then all the way up the Kemmel Straight. People forget that the top of Eau Rouge and Radiant is not the highest point. You then continue way up to the car. And actually, that is where they'll be really punished carrying that extra weight.
Yeah, a few names that you might notice in there. We saw Jenson Button, although he's just dropped out of that top 35. I mentioned earlier on at the start of the show, Jean-Eric Verne racing this weekend as part of the Coach Dave Academy. So interesting to see what he can do racing a GT car. I don't recall him racing a GT car in real life ever, Jean-Eric Verne. Adders will probably correct me on that at some point. Scott Mulvin in there as well. Adders, has Jean-Eric Verne ever raced a GT car?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, cool.
I'm willing to be corrected as ever, but I can't think that he has. No. So we're making history again here, Jack, aren't we?
Indeed. What are you looking for out of this race for the pro drivers initially, anyway?
One deep breath for 60 minutes. It's going to be awesome, isn't it? You've got, as you and John and Ben have been saying, it's a really nice jumbled grid. You've got some of the star names further back than anticipated. You've got, partly because of the ballast and partly because of the BOP, a very jumbled grid indeed. We've still got a few points to prove, I think, out of what we saw at Silverstone. A few reputations are on the line here. But what to look for? Gosh, where do you go? Ben Barnicoat from mid-grid. You know, he's got to force a way through. Seb Morris a long way back. Jordan Pepper, as John mentioned, is a long way back. Louis Delatraz, 8th in the championship, lining up on the 5th row. You know, stick a pin in the entry list almost, and you can find a winner, because it is so jumbled. I think this is going to be a really frantic 60 minutes of racing.
Lorenzo Marcucci on pole position in the Audi. Your thoughts on that?
Big surprise. I mean, I was looking at some of the test races during the week and seeing that the Audis and the Lamborghinis, which of course have the same platform, were very competitive. But you know, Marcucci is somebody that's not necessarily, with all due deference, a GT hero. He's done a bit of the NASCAR Euro Series, the French-based championship. He's done some GT4, but you know, GT3 at this level is top dollar, and Spa is a difficult circuit, and yet there he is, pole position. Very impressive indeed. Now, in the test races, although the Audis and the Lamborghinis were good at the start of the race, they did start to lose their edge after about 20 minutes or so. So it wouldn't be a surprise if he didn't get overhauled as the race wears on.
And there you see 39th on the grid for the former F1 driver and two-time Formula E champion Jean-Eric Vergne, who I mentioned earlier on. And so it is going to be Marcucci on pole, Pereira alongside him on the front row of the grid. Then we've got Hilbrand in third. So that is going to be the top three going into the pro race. The Silver Cup qualifying has happened, but we'll take you through that in detail a little bit later on when we get into the Silver Cup race, which will be the 1 hour race following this one. But we aren't too far away from getting the rolling up lap underway in this first pro race. And this is really going to be jumbling up the championship order, isn't it? I think that's going. The fascinating thing is going to be how well the cars can react, or the championship could almost be won by how well you do in the averse circumstances. When you've got a load of weight, how many points can you pick up, and can you keep it clean? But the cars now are on their formation lap. They're just making their way around the top of the hill, the highest part of the circuit, as Ben mentioned, up through Malmedy, and then starting to drop their way down. It'll be a 2x2 rolling start formation for round 2 of the SRO E-Sport GT Series. We've got Ben Constanduras, we've got John Watson, and leading the commentary is David Addison.
And we've got drama by the look of it up at Brussels, because straight away, Jack, a car makes a mistake and slides off the road. Now, who was that? Was that Marcucci from the front of the grid, or Ivan Pereiras? We'll have a look as the cars head down the hill, but we've certainly had one in drama right from the start. Now, he's not dropped to the back of the grid, so I think it might be Pereiras looking at the livery. You're able to, if you don't drop to the very back, you are able to retake your grid position. It was Ivan Pereiras that had a drama up at Brussels. That is very embarrassing indeed, to have a moment on the warming up lap. However, he's back in place. Just also, we were talking about a frantic 60 minutes ahead of us. Keeping out of trouble is going to be important in all of this. Also, just to bear in mind that the Esports Championship has Peter Roberts as the race director, an FIA accredited race director. Richard Norbury is the new steward, also an FIA accredited steward. So, you know, we're not playing at this, everybody. We're dealing with serious officials, serious drivers, and serious racing. And John Watson, we're in for a real treat here, aren't we?
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and there's two drivers I'm going to keep my eye on in particular. One is Fabrizio Crestani in the McLaren. We've got it just on picture there, that sort of purplish hue on the McLaren, but principally Raffaele Marciello. And bearing in mind from what you were mentioning about what went on in the practicing earlier in the week and the performance drop-off of some of the brands, one thing I know is that in the case of the Mercedes, it is one of the most kind cars on its tires primarily, and I suspect that maybe over driving in the early laps to try and create a position for yourself will actually harm you coming towards the end of the 1 hour race. So Raffaele Marciello contain his emotions and his spirit, because he is, if nothing else, the most exciting driver in a GT car, I think, currently in the world.
And you put him into a Mercedes and he's like a USB stick, plug and play. You know he's going to deliver the goods. You know that Marciello is going to be a man to beat. And in fact, with all due respect, if you look at the top 6, he is probably the driver within that top 6 with the best CV. So Marchiello perhaps starts as the favourite. He's third in the championship, 10 points back from Jordan Pepper, who is 27th on the grid. Remember, as we've been saying, 25 kilos of extra weight on Bentley this weekend, 17 for McLaren, 10 extra on the Mercedes, based on finishing within the top 3 at Silverstone. But round 2 of the SRO E-Sports Championship then is about to get underway as the cars come out of the bus stop. The cars accelerate up towards the Formula 1 timing line. Now, in true Spa tradition, of course, this is the timing line. It will be the finish line, but we will start, says race director Peter Roberts, on the run down towards Eau Rouge, just to mirror what we see within the total 24 hours of Spa. So the cars will now make their way around La Source, and then we start to build up. There's one car down in the pit lane. Ben Constanduris, as our pit lane correspondent, will keep an eye on people with dramas and those that miss the start, or indeed those that have server connections, something else we have to factor into the mix now. But we are set to go racing. Out of La Source they come. Everybody now accelerates down towards the start line. And is it going to be Lorenzo Marcucci to storm clear into the lead, or what can you expect from the likes of Nicolas Hillebrand or Raffaele Marchiello from rows 2 and 3? We're set to go racing here at Spa. Certainly with his nose in front is Marcucci then in the white Audi as they cross the line. We go racing. Good getaway then by Marcucci. He plunges downhill for the first time. He leads Pereiras as they head through Eau Rouge. They climb up now through Radion for the first time onto the Camel Straight. It's always heart-in-mouth stuff. 1 or 2 run wide. Kang Ling in the yellow Mercedes way out over the runoff area there. But it is Marcucci that has got the drop. Second is Pereiras. And now Hillebrand tries to find a way through. You've got Fabrizio Crestani fourth in the leading McLaren. And into second place there goes Hillebrand as they dive up towards Les Cons for the first time. Do they all get through safely? They do. Hillebrand a little bit crossed up. And that, Watty, has enabled Marcucci to get away by a couple of lengths.
Yes, it has, but the first 5 cars have actually made a break from the rest of the field, and you can just watch Marchiello right on the tail of the McLaren as they come down through Bruxelles, and the drop down through. We keep referring to it as the corner with no name, then down to what I consider to be the best corner on the racetrack, Pujol. But that's the field as they file down the drop, and this is a steep downhill drop, getting to not yet quite the lowest part of the Spa Francorchamps circuit, but there is Pujol, that double left-hand corner, and that is a big test for everybody, particularly when tyres and everything are not fully operational up to racing speed, not to drop it, not to make a silly error.
And 1 or 2 running a little bit wide there. Look, going through the piff-paff, 10 different brands we have got within this race. Don't forget, as the cars now sprint their way down towards Campus, the first right-hander, then into the Cours Paul Frere up towards the end of this opening lap. Clock ticks on down. But Ben Constanduris, this has been a really good first lap thus far from Marcucci, hasn't it? Because he looks as though he's checked out.
All about keeping out of trouble in sim racing, and that is so vital. We've already had a couple of people who have unfortunately been caught out by first lap accidents, but the front of the field have been really, really clean. Sadly though, Jean-Eric Verne and Martin Kodrick are already in pit lane, and both Alex Buncombe and Vitantonio Liuzzi were in pit lane during the start, but they are now back up out onto the circuit. Just take a quick look at the very top of the screen. Have a look at what time of day we're racing in. 7:10 is the start of this race. That should be quite spectacular by the end.
It should indeed, shouldn't it? And it's a dry, glorious summer's evening at Spa as we plunge downhill. Then Dan Wells you're riding with the 166 Lamborghini. Much underrated driver is Dan Wells, from single-seaters into GT cars. But Marcucci nearly a second to the good at the end of the opening lap. Hillebrand second, Pereiras third, Crestani fourth. Fifth is Marchiello, sixth is Simone De Luca, seventh Matteo Cairoli upholding Porsche honour ahead of Di Lorenzo, Rougier and Dan Wells rounding out the top 10. Look at this battle pack now, diving up towards Les Cons and just being able to hang on to his place, Simone De Luca, but that, John, was very tight indeed.
Well, it's no different to what we would expect in a live race, coming up Camel Straight, up to Les Cons, then through Malmedy, then the drop down Malmedy coming into Bruxelles. Everybody using the benefit of the slipstream, a group of cars, those that at the tail will get the biggest benefit, but of course the same issue applies. And I watched some of the practice this morning when Jenson Button, for example, is 3 into 2, will not go in the corner with no name, so 3 drivers compromising each other. And those that are following and reading what's going on, Michael Brown and that black McLaren was one of them, I think it was BS Michael. in 12th place, and he will have benefited from it again. Just too many cars and too little bit of racetrack as they come through the exit of Pouhon.
Now, drama there, one in the wall. Is that Arco Rougier, I think, that might have gone off the circuit. There's another one that's gone way, way wide in all of that as well. So drama heading down towards the Piff-Paff. And that's going to shuffle the order hugely as there, look, another challenge is made up on the inside line. There goes 163 Albert Costa, storming his way up the order. So, drama at the Piff-Paff. Marcucci leads the way. Hillebrand second. Pereiras third. I was about to say to Ben, it looks like Michael O'Brien's been given a drive-through penalty as well, but it's all kicked off, Ben.
Yeah, drive-through penalty for Michael O'Brien, and got to be so careful with track limits here. It's all kind of computer controlled, so if you do run a bit wide, Nissan into the wall.
Yeah, that's on the exit of Blanchimont, trying to go around the outside of Blanchimont. Not particularly with David Fumanelli, who we are riding on board with, so that was, whether there was contact, we couldn't tell from where we're sitting, whether that was a contact. And further, well, it's all kicking off now as they come up the hill towards the chicane.
It was Brian Heitkotter in the Nissan that's ended up in the wall, but the race director, Peter Roberts, the steward Richard Norbury, I think they're going to be busy now. We've got one car rejoining from a pit stop there as well, Ben, heading down on the inside through the endurance pits. Now, while all this is going on, Hillebrand second, Pereira still third, De Luca fourth, Di Lorenzo fifth, Matteo Cairoli sixth, seventh is Louis Delatraz, in eighth place Miguel Grenier, ninth Albert Costa making good progress, but down to 10th is Marciello, so Raffaelli has got work to do here.
I didn't see the reason why Marciello has dropped out. He was in 5th place on the opening lap, down to 10th place. Whether there's been a little getting together, we've been watching parts of the field, not necessarily following those at the very front. But Raffaele Marciello, one who I thought would have been a potential winner, certainly a podium stander, down in, he's actually dropped down to further place. Mike O'Brien is now into 10th place, and he's sort of squeezed between the McLaren in 10th and the Lamborghini in 12th.
And Arno Santamato gets turned around, so another of the Mercedes in strife. Just when you think you might be getting a good run, something goes against you, doesn't it? So right now, Lorenzo Marcucci leads the way. Now the lead gap has come down a little, only by a couple of tenths, but down it has come. In third is Ivan Pereiras, fourth Di Lorenzo, Dan Wells there going through in 12th place, number 166 Lamborghini. And off the road in the background, who was that going straight off?
I think that was Marciello. It looked like a Mercedes to me.
Okay.
To get confirmation.
62, you see, is Luca Giotto. He's got Ben Tusting's McLaren up behind him, so this battle is for 16th and 17th places, but you throw all that up in the air because it's going to change again. Lots of the drivers, of course, with the message system, Ben, able to offer their thoughts on their early demise. I think Jean-Eric Verne has just put his head above the parapet to offer an opinion, but it doesn't look like we're going to see a lot more of him.
We've got all three drivers that were in the top three at Silverstone, all in the pit lane. Barnicot and Pepper got involved with that crash with Heitkotter just on the exit of Blanchimont. They went into the pits, and we've just seen Marciello now in pits as well.
Marciello, it was the Marciello car that went off into the Fagna sequence of corners, and he's come into the pit lane in 30th position.
Right, okay, thank you, John, for that. So, yes, illustrating this point Ben made it about keeping out of trouble in sim racing. Some do, some don't, and these are the pros. Well, that's a bit flippant in a sense, because these are real-world drivers, not as well-versed in the sim world as the sim drivers that we'll see in the silver race. But right now, Arno Santamato recovering. He's down in 28th place after being tagged into a spin, and he's got work to do as he heads down towards La Source now, through that tight right-hand hairpin. And now, John, the speed builds as he plunges downhill.
Yes, if we get to ride with Arno Santamato, it'll be interesting, because watching him earlier this morning, he was using more racetrack here at Spa than I think the designers ever built into the circuit. He was, I mean, of all the drivers we watched, he was exceeding track limits significantly.
Now, where's the next mover in the pack going to be? Perhaps we ought to start looking at these Porsches. It was Porsche that won the 24-hour race, the Total 24 Hours of Spa last year. Indeed, it was a 1-2. Cairoli is 6th, Delatraz 7th. Cairoli never got to the start at Silverstone. Delatraz got a drive-through and yo-yoed his way up and down the order. And as they come down through Speaker's Corner, still the race leader is Lorenzo Marcucci from pole position. Number 11 Ferrari goes by. That is the David Fumanelli-driven car. Fumanelli currently in 17th place, keeping Scott Mulvin behind him.
This group are looking at 6th, 7th and 8th, the Bentley, the Ferrari, the Bentley, the Porsche. So Delatraz and 7th, Grenier in the Lamborghini, 8th. Alberto Costa, the Lamborghini 9th, Mike O'Brien and the McLaren in 10th. So this is the top, or the bottom of the top 10. And the Bentley looking to find a way through. But it's not going to be easy. The Ferrari will not concede that position.
Indeed so. Scott Mulvin in the Team Parker Racing Bentley, number 38 going through. Simone Iaquinta, he was one of the drivers that was given a reprimand after one of the test races for getting the attention of the officials, shall we say. But Iaquinta 12th for Porsche. Marcucci leading, but only by 8/10 still. Not yet being able to build that gap back up. But Iaquinta is under attack now. Look at Giotto. Starts to mount an attack on the outside line down towards the bus stop. Is he going to be able to find a way through? Not there. Turn right, turn left, and now blast up towards the timing line. This is Giotto's view, John, heading past the pits.
Well, he didn't get it done coming into the chicane, and he wasn't able to do very much in the middle of the chicane. The Porsche covered every move the Aston Martin was making, and again, you can see no gain up, well, what would be the finish straight, not the start straight, the finish straight. Here at Spa, down the hill now, out of La Source, drop down 4th gear, 5th gear, 6th gear. And when you get down here, if you're brave, you might breathe the engine. If you're not brave, you might just ride a little bit of your left foot in the brake just to check the entry speed into Eau Rouge. But get off the brake to drive the car up over radio. And now you can see precisely what Giotto's doing. He's gotten a good run up the hill, out of radio, and through Camel corner, up Camel straight, onto the brakes. But he's on the outside of the corner, but he's got the nose of the Aston ahead of the Porsche. Made a position. Good overtake.
Excellent move, and that puts Giotto into 11th. Now, in contrast, Jenson Button is being given a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through. 3 penalty points for causing a collision at turn 18, which is down at the bus stop. So that's from the stewards. Ben, a thought on this? Jenson Button being penalised like this? Tut, tut, tut.
I've just seen that he's gone through the pit lane, so there's been plenty of people having to visit the pits. And in fact, Jenson Button, one of our star drivers, Jean-Eric Verne, the other star driver, disqualified already from the race. Not quite sure why, but certainly feeling the wrath of either the stewards or his internet connection.
I don't know which is worse. I think internet connections these days is more draconian than upsetting the stewards. He says, speaking from recent experience. Now, we are currently looking at 49 minutes to go. We've done 4 laps, and suddenly the gap has shot up to 4 seconds, and that is because Hillebrand has dropped a long way back into 9th place, and so it's the Audis 1 and 2 once again, but Pereiras is the man doing the chasing, but Marcucci suddenly has been given an enormous lead.
Very nice indeed, if you can get it. Now, we've got 48 minutes of this race remaining. It's still a long, long way in relative terms. Advantage that he's got exactly the same as we saw Jordan Pepper at Silverstone a couple of weeks ago. When you've got clear air, you can drive your race, you can put your where you want to put it at any part of the racetrack without any interference from somebody who you might be chasing. Just being chased.
David Fuminelli getting a bit scrappy on that lap, wasn't he, in the red Ferrari there, number 11. He's in 16th place, keeping Scott Mulvin at bay. Ahead of them is Kang Ling in the bright yellow Mercedes, but Fuminelli was way off the road in a couple of places. Another driver that's doing a good job is Jody Fannin, then 14th in the Valkenhorst BMW.
Yeah, great work. Not a car that's very easy to drive in Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is the platform we're using. The BMW really difficult. So doing a great job keeping that car on track. Now, you may remember favourites from Silverstone, Dennis Lind, driving the Lamborghini, didn't really show his hand too well. The Lamborghini struggled at Silverstone. Well, he's had even more bad luck in his computer having a problem before the start of this day, and therefore that is why we don't see Dennis in our entry list for this one. He will be a person to factor in when we get through the rest of the season.
Definitely, because he's got sim as well as real-world experience. Right, Fuminelli is ahead of Kang Ling. Here comes Scott Mulvin up the inside of the blue Bentley. And ex-single-seater racer Kang Ling gets forced out wide. So Scott Mulvin, who made his name really in Formula 4 many, many years ago, now GT4 and GT3 star, he goes through on the inside. That picks up 16th place for Scott Mulvin.
Yeah, very often with Kang Ling, he got sort of mugged really by overtaken by the Ferrari, then the Bentley, and came past almost nose to tail, and Kang Ling just stepped sideways, let them go.
Now there going through is 53 Audi, Simone De Luca. Lower down, you're looking at the yellow and blue, almost Scandinavian Ferrari of Maxim Yefanov in 23rd. Ezequiel Perez Companc now ahead of him, just gains that place. So Companc, who was in the wars at Silverstone, moves himself up to 23rd, switching to Mercedes for eSports Racing.
I've worked out what happened to Jean-Eric Verne. He's reporting on the chat that he was disqualified for driving the wrong way down the pit lane. That he was stuck and squashed against the pit wall. That's why he had to do that, but unfortunately he will take no further part. And by the looks of things, Marcello is still in pit lane, so whatever his issue was, it is not fixable, and I think he is out of this race. But by the looks of the way the car drove off the circuit, I think this might be a hardware issue at home with his wheel or his computer, rather than something that happened within his race.
Okay,
Well,
thanks, Ben.
Yeah, certainly it looked like that when Marcello went off, he just went straight ahead going into Fagnes. So if that had been a real race, you'd have put it down to a mechanical issue. But of course, it's a sim race that may be a technical issue that's internet related or whichever.
Now Ben's going to keep an eye on lap times for us and see whether the pace of the race leader, Lorenzo Marcucci, is going to be sustainable for another 45 minutes, or whether we can anticipate some of those gaps to come down late race. There is Kang Ling, and the Mercedes booms up the Camel Straight. Still makes a fabulous noise, that Mercedes, into the right of Lecon. And Kang Ling coming under attack from Seb Morris now, another of the quick Brits in a Bentley.
Yeah, and I think Seb Morris will be looking to mirror what we saw happen a few minutes ago when the sister Bentley made its way past Kang Ling. Seb Morris races here, well, often he's probably raced here as many times as anybody does, in conjunction with Spa 24 Hours, but also with the British GT Championship, which comes here as well.
Yeah, he's another convert from single-seater racing. Now, getting a replay here, does this explain what happened to Nicolas Hillebrand, maybe? So this is out of La Source, past the endurance pits, the old pits, into Eau Rouge, and the Ferrari rides the curb, and off it goes. Oof, big time into the tyres.
Well, I'd hoped we would have had the gravel traps back at Spa at the top of radio, and that's what's being proposed for full-time racing when it does return to the Spa circuit. Currently, we've still got the tarmac, which of course didn't do a huge amount to slow the car down before it made contact with the veil or the barrier on the outside of Radion.
Well, we've seen a fair few dramas up at the top of the hill there, John, over the last few years. Hillebrand got away lightly with that. He's down in 11th place, but he is at least still circulating. Did you ride with Albert Costa for Emile Frey Racing?
Yeah, behind Louis. Yeah, Louis Delatraz just ahead in the Porsche. So comes across the line to see he's just under 3 seconds behind Caroli in the Lamborghini. So he needs a little bit more progress. The battle at the front, 6 seconds between first and second. That's a big lump of time.
It is, isn't it? And it looks, Ben, as though for the moment Marcucci is good to stay at that pace. It's not suggesting that Pereiras is going to get up with him anytime soon.
No, we're still early into this race, and as John will know, these tyres are always a factor in this race, depending on how you use them. Especially around here, especially this time of the evening as well. It's not going to be the middle of the day hot tarmac that you would normally expect, and so the tyres will behave differently at the end of the race. Let's just hope that these guys have done some kind of test race or setup work to know that they were racing at this time of night and make sure the tyres last to the end, because I mean it could well be that they'll only drop off right at the end of the race.
On board with Simone Iaquinta in his Porsche, running in 12th place. That's Ben Tusting's McLaren ahead. Now Ben was very impressive, remember, at Silverstone, historic single-seater racer, got himself into the top 10 in the opening round of this SRO E-Sports Championship. Tusting goes a little bit wide at Bruxelles. Iaquinta closing up again in the Porsche, now into the so-called Speaker's Corner. This left-hander with limited runoff on the outside, and that was catching people out at the very end of last year's Total 24 Hours of Spa. Seb Morris goes through 17th, and he's inching up, John, onto the back of Kang Ling, ready to make a move.
Yes, he's been working this last lap, just getting closer by the corner, and he's now at a point, as they come out of Buhol, he's not close enough to make a dive down the inside into Fagnes, but it's all proprietary work. Best place that Seb Morris may have, if he can just keep the gap between the Mercedes and the Bentley as it is currently, is get a big strong run out of Stabilo over the Paul Frere curve, up the hill through Blanchimont, and then that final run up to the bus stop chicane, turns 18 and 19. That's where he's got to focus on making his opportunity, make a position.
But if anything, Iaquinta now dropping away from Ben Tusting, and Jody Fannin in the BMW is closing up. Now that's Louis Delatraz versus Albert Costa in the Lamborghini. Porsche versus Lambo as they head to the line. 6th and 7th, these two. They're the colours for GPX Racing that won the Total 24 Hours of Spa last year. So down towards La Source comes Louis Delatraz. Back on the plough, the House F1 tester. Goes now past the endurance pits, and Ben, another drive through for Iaquinta this time.
Yeah, as I was kind of starting to say, it's so difficult here at Spa. The computer will read your car position. If it decides you've made up more than 1 second, as there was a very slow car there at the top of Radiant that they managed to avoid. If the computer decides that you've run off and gained more than 1 second, it is an instant drive-through penalty. There will be a couple of warnings before that, but it doesn't take long for you to dip 2 wheels over the curb a little bit too much. And it's not as though you can get away with it like you can in the real world sometimes. The computer reads every single millimetre and it's instant penalisation. So I think we're going to see a lot of these drive-through penalties. And they only have 3 laps to do it, otherwise they get disqualified.
Okay, David Fuminelli is being given a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through for causing a collision with car 55. Brian Heitkotter, that was the one we were on board with, wasn't it?
And that caught out Jordan Pepper and Ben Barnicoat behind, and a few others. And obviously for the championship, that is pretty key because they are way down the order now.
True enough. Now here, John, Porsche versus Lamborghini, and Albert Costa is starting to plan the move, isn't he?
Again, he's just working away, corner by corner, drawing the Lamborghini a little bit closer to the rear of the Porsche. Now the Porsche, with the engine hanging out behind the rear wheels, has got some benefits around some of these slower corners, in particular at Spa Francorchamps. The balance overall between the Lamborghini and the Porsche may be fractionally favourable towards the Lamborghini, but you've got a flat 6 Porsche engine again, the 10 Lamborghini. This is the battle with the Bentleys, and
That's Jody Fannin up into 12th.
The BMW.
Yeah, don't forget that's the type of car, and indeed the team, Valkenhorst, that won the Total 24 Hours of Spa 2 years ago.
I mean, it's amazing that the transition between real racing and sim racing is that the sim car, Ben, you mentioned that it was more difficult to drive here at Spa than maybe some of the other cars that we're watching.
Well, right now, Jody Fannin is doing a good job keeping Scott Mulvin at bay. Then the penalised David Fuminelli. The lead gap is up again, 6.7 seconds now that the leader Lorenzo Marcucci has over Ivan Pereiras, the two that locked out the front of the grid. Running third is Luigi De Lorenzo, who was 6th on the grid and 4th in the championship. So looking good for points as far as he is concerned. Throw everybody up in the air. Kang Ling goes wide. Louis Delatraz 8th in the championship before the race, running 5th. So if you're thinking points, it's going to be a very jumbled set of stats come the end of this race. 38.5 minutes to go. And what do we look for next, Ben?
Well, I'm quite impressed by Dan Wells, a man that perhaps is not necessarily well known to our European counterparts, but he's done a fantastic job over in Asia and been following online, and he's got himself a really, really nice new direct drive setup in his apartment in Hong Kong, and it's working really well for him. As Lamborghini is working well, he's in 8th. Here's a replay.
And it's 53, isn't it? Simone De Luca that we're looking at. Now, De Luca was in that leading gaggle early on. Is this going to be another victim of Eau Rouge? Yes, it is.
I mean, the car looked strange all the way down the hill, frankly. It looked as if it was crabbing coming down the hill. Ooh. And, of course, then the traffic has to go one way and the other to avoid what could have been another unpleasant incident at the top of Radion. That's the concern I have with that tarmac runoff. It gets used conveniently to get out of trouble rather than backing off and doing it that way. In the meantime, this is the battle with Albert Costa and the Porsche. So Delatraz has managed to keep the Lamborghini. What he is effectively doing is controlling the pace of these two cars and denying Costa the opportunity to get a run. He's got the chance coming through Blanchimont. This is maybe going to be his best chance to get a run up the hill into the bus stop chicane, but it looks like it's not going to happen. He's thinking about it, but no. Sensibly, he backed out of it.
Didn't have a long look, didn't he? But Louis Delatraz, second generation racer, is able to get his elbows out and make sure that he hangs onto the place. Over the timing line, then they go. This, remember, is for 5th and 6th. 7.4 seconds is the lead gap. Albert Costa again sticks his nose up the inside, tries to force open the door as they plunge downhill now, heading past the endurance pits, the old pits, down towards Eau Rouge. Is this going to be an opportunity for the Lamborghini to challenge? No, the gap actually widens by a car's length. So Delatraz, yes, he's able to gap the Lamborghini by a length, but the trouble is he's having to spend so much of the lap defending, he's not being able to do anything about Cairoli's Porsche up the road. We'll keep an eye on this, Ben, I'll get to you in a moment, because there are more penalties I see, but Albert Costa lines up for a move on the inside line. We're on board now with David Fumanelli, and Costa is ahead of Delatraz, incidentally. He's just updated on the timing, so Costa made that move at Lincoln, but he's gone by.
Yeah, that was a good move, worked it out, executed it there. We see the result of it coming out of Normandy, dropping down into Bruxelles. So it's taken a couple laps to get the Lamborghini into a position to make that effective overtake. Did it outstandingly on the run up out to Radio, up the hill, up into Les Combes, stuck the Lamborghini up the inside, and Louis Delatraz had no answer, just had to accept it.
I was following that battle, David, with Fumanelli, and actually Seb Morris was part of that battle up until the bus stop chicane the last time by. He managed to get past Fannin and Mulvin, but overcooked it and spun, so drops out of that battle. They all are really being held up now, I think, by Jody Fannin. We've got Scott Mulvin right there, Fumanelli, Sarah, who's actually struggling a little bit with internet connection issues, so his internet is a little dodgy, and here's Scott Mulvin now trying to find a way past Jody Fannin.
And job done, isn't it? So through he goes. Scott Mulvin goes by here as they come towards the Piff Path, through the right, through the left, short burst of acceleration, right again at campus, past the college. There you see the buildings represented on the inside. There's another penalty floating to Ben Tusting. There's another one to Simone Iaquinta for making contact with Ben Tusting. Tusting is being penalised for making contact with Jordan Pepper early on in the race, so the race officials are being kept busy. So now we've got, as we've seen, Scott Mulvin up into 11th place, released from behind the BMW. Can he now start to make some progress, or is Jody Fannin going to come back at it? You've got two big beasts there, Bentley and BMW running together. Chris Froggatt goes by in the Sky liveried Ferrari. Chris Froggatt, graduate of the Ferrari One Mate Championship. He's making good progress here, up into 15th position, and he's not done yet.
Now that's been a good drive from Chris Froggatt. Just noticed it on the timing and scoring that he's in 15th position. But they were coming up to the half hour, 34 minutes of this race remaining. Just to focus back on my predictions. What's happened to Raffaele Marcello? Well, we know that, but what's happened to Cristani and the McLaren? It's fallen away also. I haven't seen it in the top 26 on my timing and scoring.
And David Perel also, Coach Dave Guru, he has dropped a long way back into 26th, which is frustrating. The lead gap still 8 seconds. You've got to take your chapeau off here to Marcucci, because Lorenzo is doing a great job building this lead over Ivan Pereiras. Now looking on screen, Jody Fannin trying to defend from David Fumanelli, who's still got his 30-second penalty. Fumanelli looks to the outside, can't do it there. But while Fannin is having to defend, so Scott Mulvin is edging away up the road. Ben, Scott is going to get into that top 10, isn't he, because of Ben Tusting's 30-second penalty?
Yeah, already kind of established. Really happy to see the British GT Championship being represented by Scott. He's doing a great job. He's a super fast driver in the real world as well as in the virtual, but it's taken him a bit of time to get up to speed in the virtual world. And of course, his Bentley carrying success ballast as well. All of the Bentleys, all the McLarens and all the Mercedes have that success ballast from the opening round, and I think he is now the highest placed of those marks.
I think you're right in saying that. Yes, ballast free, Audi 1 and 2 at the moment, and then third in the hands of Luigi Di Lorenzo is the Aston Martin. Right, riding on board with the leader, remember him, Lorenzo Marcucci comes out of the bus stop, up through the gears, over the timing line, and now the clock starts in order to give us that gap over Ivan Pereiras in second place, down towards La Source. But here, Marcucci, John, he's made the break, and he's away and gone, isn't he?
Yes, and you can see just from his driving style, every input that he's putting into the car, the brakes, the steering, the gear changes, all done with so much time. And that's what he's gained. Not only gained time ahead of second place, 8.6 seconds, but in his own driving, everything is coming slowly to him. When you're in a battle with somebody, it all comes rather quickly. But when you're driving, as you're saying Marcucci do right now, it's almost sublime.
He's clear by 8.6 seconds. Pereiras in second spot. Then in third, in number 44 Aston, is Luigi Di Lorenzo. That car going nicely here, the Modena Kart ASD team entry. There is Albert Costa running fifth. And Albert Costa, of course, is another driver hustling his way up the order.
And he's made the break. He's clear now of Louis Delatraz. Nothing much that the Porsche was able to do in response. So Costa takes a little bit of the curb on the inside. That's permissible. It's when you get all four wheels off the racetrack. It's the exit, actually, it's the exit at Nalmedy where you can get caught out. And there in Lang again being lured as he comes out over radio and loses another place to Yelvanov.
Yeah, the Ferrari just storms by, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Albert Costa just finished the point, up from 16th on the grid, now running in 5th place. Really good effort there. So Kangling falls back. There he is, number 33 Mercedes. We've got almost half the race to go. We're just about at the halfway mark now as Kangling for ARC Bratislava turns out of the right-hander of Bruxelles and starts to drop down the hill.
David, interesting thing about Louis Delatraz is not only is he racing with us today in a set of Corsa Competizione in a GT3 car, but in a couple of hours' time he'll be jumping into the F1 game and he'll be doing a GP2 race in the F1 game. So he was a bit concerned about the timetables today, whether he could do both. He's managed to... That's the kind of thing you'll need in the real world, being able to do something like that. Maybe back in the olden days you'd see them jumping disciplines in the same day, but it's the cool thing that we have in the virtual world right now.
Yeah, there have been examples, haven't there, of people doing different races at the same event or helicoptering from one to another, but it's good that it happens in the sim racing world, and it's good that the enthusiasm from the drivers is there as well, and more of these keep springing up. Now, we are into the second half of the race. We're riding with David Fumanelli, who has this Damocletian penalty still looming over him, 30 seconds to be applied at the end of the race. John, we're riding with him, lots of curb at Blanchimont.
Yeah, and just watching Delatraz, he's lost another place to Daniel Serra and his sister Ferrari being chased by Chris Froggatt. So there are the three Ferraris, in fact, it's 4 Ferraris coming through the bus stop chicane up across start, or the finish line. I keep saying start, finish, that's the finish line. So Fumanelli, half a second behind Serra, who's a further 1.2 seconds behind Fannin in the BMW.
So Fumanelli there, number 11 Ferrari, heads downhill. Daniel Serra, Chico Serra's son, is ahead in his Ferrari, 13th place. Chris Froggatt going after them. There he is, coming into shot in the white Ferrari. Chris, who represented the United Kingdom in the FIA Motorsport Games GT tournament last year. Fumanelli climbs the other side of Eau Rouge, up the Camel Straight now. Arthur Rougier is being given a penalty in the form of 2 penalty points for causing a collision early on with Michael O'Brien on the second lap of the race. We saw that down at the Pif-Paf. There is 62 Aston Martin. That's Luca Giotto, and Giotto is in 7th place with Dan Wells crawling all over the back of him. Ben and I keep making the point, Dan, much underrated driver, but is very, very talented indeed. Single-seater racer, ran out of money, went off to China to race and win in Formula Pilota and make a name for himself in Asia, and has done pretty nicely for himself. But on the European market, he's still not very well known. He's a well-kept secret, but Ben, bags of ability Dan Wells has.
Quite a good commentator as well. He's done a few commentaries in both the F1 paddock and Formula E when they were visiting Hong Kong. He was the voice of Formula E in Hong Kong. So he's a multi-talented guy and has really kind of found a niche for himself over there, looking after so many of the drivers in Hong Kong and kind of being a bit of a driver coach to them as well.
It's Philip Kadori, isn't it, that he drives with in, for example, Super Trofeo Asia or in historic double driver events. Well, the Spa circuit as fabulous as ever, and as now Delatraz goes through, this is the replay of big dramas there, because bouncing off the tyres, number 14, Michael Grenier. So having just got himself onto the back of the Porsche, John, that was a real mess coming again out of Eau Rouge.
Yeah, and once it starts to go, as you climb up the hill, up of Eau Rouge towards Radio, if the back end gets away from you, there's not very much you're going to do to save it, and he managed to, I suppose, get some kind of result by continuing on, but just while all this was going on, David Fumanelli actually managed to get ahead of Chris Froggatt. They've changed 13th to 14th, so that was a little pass that happened 1 lap ago as they all came up to the top of the Camel Straight into Lake Cum.
We had the track guide at the very start from Andy Soucek. Ben, he's another, I think, that's struggled in this race. Andy Soucek not in that top 23, and it's not a good day for Bentley.
He's last, and in the pits. In fact, he retired a lap before Rafael Marcello, so didn't really see what happened to him. But those cars, Bentley put so much effort into everything that they're doing, and they look so beautiful with the liveries they put on. But sadly, Soucek, 11 laps down. I think we're only on lap 11.
Now, talking of 11, number 11 Ferrari is David Fuminelli, and he is under attack, isn't he, now, as they drop down the hill in towards Bruxelles. 26 minutes are on the clock here at a virtual Spa.
Some good stuff in the chat. Arno Santamato saying, "Thank you, Fuminelli. It's not stock car racing." Presumably able to do that whilst his car's being repaired in the pit lane. Fuminelli carrying that penalty for collision, but obviously the drivers are able to get into a chat and to voice their frustrations and make their excuses. Jordan Pepper is another one asking for clarification as to the issues that he's had when he's racing on track and seeing other cars what they call rubber band, which means the car appears to be closer than it actually is, and then it jumps away from you and gets closer to you again due to the internet connections.
Right.
And I'm sure Watty can appreciate that would be a horrific thing to experience in the real world, not knowing where the cars are around you.
Well, it has happened at places like Hockenheim in rain when you can see nothing. All you can do is hear where cars are, but you have no idea where they are. And in the meantime, Daniel Serra, he's got ahead of Fuminelli on this run back up to the bus stop chicane. You can see 333. That is in 24th position in his Ferrari. And maybe he should take some of his own coaching lessons. I don't know if that's a fair comment, because I don't know why David Perello is so far down. Normally, he's much more to the fore in any race we see him in.
You're quite right, and it can only be, John, that selflessly he's letting the customers do better today. Always look after your customer. I'm sure this is the customer care department of Coach Dave Academy. David Perel sacrificing himself just for today. But you're right, he's a very, very quick driver, both in real world and sim racing. And as he powers up the hill, we are on board now in 12th place with Daniel Serra. We can see in the screen behind what's going on. Ferrari closing. Now, John makes a move on the inside.
Well, he's got the ahead of him. Where is the sister Ferrari that has just come through? That's Fuminelli, I'm assuming, who's managed to slipstream past Daniel Serra, and that was a strange overtake. I didn't expect that one to come because the focus was really on what Serra was doing with Fanon in the BMW.
Yeah, the Ferrari's yo-yoing a little bit in this race, aren't they? But at least that's a place gain then for Fuminelli. There is Ricky Collard, who we've not seen a huge amount of. Ricky was disqualified at Silverstone, and he's 22nd here. Brian Heitkotter here is in 20th place, recovering from being turned into the wall early in the race. The Nissan heads downhill. His next target, Miguel Molina.
So there is second place. Carreras in the Audi now 11.2 seconds behind race leader Marcucci, who has just literally he's driven the perfect race in every sense. 23 minutes remaining, but no pressure whatsoever. His only pressure may be if they come into lap traffic, but again, because he's got this wonderful rhythm working for him. As we look down at Caroli in the Porsche in 4th place, being chased Albert Costa. Well, Costa's had a flavour of the exhaust fumes from a Porsche early in the race. Now he's got them once again from Caroli in that magnificent lizard green coloured Porsche.
The dynamic motorsport car then of Matteo Cairoli, Porsche factory driver, turns out of La Source. 22 3/4 minutes on the clock as the sun starts to set here. 7:45 local time at Spa.
Almost. And Watty makes a very good point. Is it beside you? Mine's just
it is, Ben, yes.
Very good, well done. Watty makes a very, very good point, actually, and something they were talking about with the Audis in the test races. In traffic, at high speed, going through the likes of Radion or Blanchimont, the Audi is not very good in dirty air, and it feels very unstable. So something to watch out for if they do catch lap traffic.
Yeah, and I would imagine that Marcucci, he's got sufficient of a gap. He's got 11.7 seconds. So if he does find himself running close to where the car may not be so much a part of the driver as he would like it to be, he doesn't need to take the chance. He can afford to drop back a couple of tenths a second to ensure that he doesn't get into trouble. He's still going to have over 11 seconds advantage on the second place, and that's an Audi in second place, which is a further 1.5 seconds up the road from De Lorenzi and the Aston Martin.
Well, Cairoli, meantime, is hanging on to that 4th place. Is he going to be able to get onto the podium by the very end? I don't think he is. He's far too far back from De Lorenzo, and he's busy defending from Albert Costa. Remember, 16th on the grid. This has been a really good drive by Costa, and he's not done yet, is he, with 21 minutes still to go?
No, he's not. He's just going on board now with Albert Costa Balboa. I didn't realise his full name is Costa Balboa, but there we are. We call him Albert Costa. So he's sitting back, doing precisely what he did with Louis Delatraz a few laps ago, looking, seeing where the strengths of my car is, or are, where the strengths of the Porsche is or are, and again, coming up through Blanchimont, closest to the back of the Porsche, again, thinking about it. Will I make a move down the inside into the bus stop chicane? No, I'm not close enough. I don't need to take the risk. But there's a mistake from Cairoli. He gets himself out of position in the middle of the chicane. But Albert Costa wasn't able to take really any significant benefit or advantage from that minor error.
So over the timing line they go. The gap between them, 0.350 of a second, is at the inside, and there's contact. Albert Costa stuck the Lamborghini at the inside. It is Cairoli who comes off worse, loses 2 places and has another spin on recovery. Louis Delatraz gets up between the pair, and Delatraz now tries to take advantage of the delay for Albert Costa. But, John, it may well be that the race officials have something to say about that. Your thoughts?
Well, I've got plenty to say about it. That's what the officials are going to say. Simply because all the things I've been saying about Albert Costa, thinking driver, getting it right, not pushing, not taking chances, he did it completely wrong coming into La Source. He was not in a position to take the ground away from the Porsche. He just carried too much speed. He had nowhere to go. It was a closing gap. The Porsche was taken. And there will, in my view, a penalty for what has been a great drive up until this moment by Albert Costa.
Yeah, it's a shame it's going to potentially end that way, as now Louis Delatraz might be able to get 4th place back, a legacy of all of that. Here's the replay. Rossi, talk us through it.
So up over the finish line, look at the gap as they come in. Suddenly, is it brain fade or what? I'm going to make a dive, but he gets to the position. The Porsche it's always the Porsche's corner. Closing gap. Once you're in a closing gap, nothing you can do. You just sit there, wait for the inevitable, and of course the inevitable will ultimately be a penalty. A drive-through penalty has just been handed down to Albert Costa. Great, spoiled by a moment of impetuosity. What a shame.
A real shame, but the stewards agree, and it is a drive-through, so Delatraz will get his 4th place back. It's going to take some unravelling, Ben, this result, isn't it, with time penalties and drive-throughs to factor in as well, but Delatraz will at least get 1 spot back before the end.
One of the things you have to consider about the way that these guys are driving is they don't have the field of view that they would do if they were in a real-world car, especially when you're going into La Source with such a tight hairpin. Usually as a driver, you'll be turning your head to the apex of the corner, but of course your field of view, unless you're using virtual reality goggles, is fixed. They will, however, have a system that tells them if there's a car alongside, so that's kind of explaining if there is an overlap or not. But it's one of those struggles that sim racing will never really be able to overcome, is you cannot move your field of view around like you would do in a real-world vehicle.
Okay, it's all interesting to factor that in, because it's very easy for us as non-sim people looking from the outside without realising the nuances of it. Just thinking about what we saw at Silverstone, the race leader, Lorenzo Marcucci, only 13th, Ivan Pereiras 7th, and Luigi Di Lorenzo ended up 44th at the end, way down. So it's, as we were predicting before the race started, going to be a very jumbled order. There's more jumbling to come because of penalties. There are 17 minutes of drama to have on the track as well. Scott Mulvern inching his way up the order nicely. Scott now in 9th, Dan Wells 7th, and big drama there as somebody runs way wide coming out of Eau Rouge, bounces off the tyres.
But Sarah, I think.
Okay.
It was certainly one of the Ferraris, couldn't get the number just as it came towards us, but that group
instantly
of Ferraris
in the pits as well.
Yeah, Scott Mulvern there in 9th place as we come through Les Combes, then into Malmedy. The drop down has opened up between that Ferrari and Scott Malvern, and will he be? No, he's not going to be the beneficiary. It's Tusing in the McLaren that's showing to be currently in 8th place, some 5 seconds ahead of Scott Malvern.
Yeah, but Tusting's then got a penalty, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Ben, yep.
What's confusing about this battle we've been watching over the last couple of laps is David Perel is ahead of this battle now, and he was behind them. He's a lap down, so he's faster than these guys. Yeah. He's gone through the pack, and actually for the last couple of laps, Scott's been following him, but now it's probably a bit too far to really learn anything from David Perel. But that's what's been a bit confusing there, that he's actually not in that race, but going faster than that group.
Why has Chris Froggatt got a drive-through, anybody? Do we know? Because they're 93 Ferrari, looking for a way past Fuminelli. Chris Froggatt 12th on the road, but being shown as having a drive-through.
It's like an automatic drive-through for track limits, so gaining more than 1 second by being off track.
Understood. But Chris Froggatt, and John touched on this earlier, has done a really good job in this race, working his way forward. And here he is, John, on the tail of Fuminelli now.
Yes, and it's sort of a bit of a seesaw race in part for Chris Froggatt, but back behind Fuminelli, who one would assume just from experience alone would be the quicker of the two drivers. But Froggatt coming back strongly, maybe for reasons we don't know. We'll maybe find out once this race, some of the post-race interviews, what was it that enabled him to come back forward and challenge Fuminelli, albeit he's got that drive-through penalty.
So Chris Froggatt down through La Source. He is, and now accelerates down the hill once again. "15 minutes on the clock." You see the commitment being put in as ever through that section of circuit. And now can Froggatt get himself close enough to challenge on the run up towards Les Combes? Let's see, there's the gap between the two Ferraris, and it's virtually nothing at all. This is for 11th place, but Fuminelli, at least for the moment, John, is able to fend off Chris Froggatt.
Yeah, I thought maybe Froggatt was fractionally quicker on the exit out of Eau Rouge and Radion, but that might have been just a slightly optical illusion. Fuminelli didn't have to do anything to defend his current position. He's in 11th. Chris Froggatt all over the back, almost as close as you can get. This is on board with Chris Froggatt down through, we call it Speaker's Corner, or a corner with no name. The drop then further down the hill. Pretty flat rear wing angle, certainly on Fuminelli's car. I don't know whether there's much adjustment available on the Ferrari, but certainly that level of wing will help you in a straight line. So you may not be the quickest through Eau Rouge and Radio, but you will probably be able to protect your position coming up into the Les Combes.
So Fuminelli just maintaining this gap over Chris Froggatt for the moment then. Chris, another driver that's worked his way nicely through the order. He was way back on the grid, but has tigered his way through towards the front. Lead gap in the meantime, 14 seconds. Marcucci to Pereiras. There is Froggatt running a little bit wide over the curb as they come into the Cours Paul Frere now. But Fuminelli half a second to the good at the last sector point. He's more experienced, a real-world driver than Chris Froggatt. Can he hang on in there for 13 and a half more minutes?
Well, I think what Fuminelli will be doing is thinking, well, can I get back onto the tail of the BMW? It's a further 1.6 seconds up the road, 13 minutes and so remaining. And that's what I think Fuminelli will be thinking about more than concerning himself with this car. That's the Audi, I beg your pardon. The white Ferrari of Chris Froggatt.
Froggatt started 33rd and he's running 12th. That's another driver making tremendous progress.
Absolutely, that's a very strong drive. We go back to our race leader, and I don't want to have the commentator's curse to say that everything is looking sublime for Lorenzo Marcucci, but right now, well, he looks almost to be driving slowly, but I think that's the function of what happens when you get into that wonderful area of rhythm, that you can just drive as you choose.
There's Nicholas Nielsen in 27th place, and he's another one with a drive-through penalty. So the automatic drive-throughs are coming really, as Ben was suggesting, for track limits, whereas the stewards are giving either drive-throughs or 30-second penalties in lieu of a drive-through for track limits. And Albert Costa tumbling down the order now because of his penalty. So Froggatt gains a place. They're going through Nicholas Nielsen, another young gun.
I think Nielsen was also involved in an accident at the start of the race as well. the accident that took out Jean-Eric Verne, which was going Eau Rouge, Radion, that kind of area, knocked out a good half a dozen cars initially. So he's been into the pits and got a repair, and actually not running too badly now.
No, indeed, and he's another of those underrated drivers that we haven't really seen the best of yet, as he looks for budget and in turn a drive. And there, going off the road, is Seb Morris in the background. He was in 14th place, was the man from North Wales, but he might lose another spot because Ezequiel Perez Companc is now going to try and challenge him. But they are. So for Bentley, in fact, no, Companc has gone AWOL. It's now going to be number 8 Bentley that gets up behind him on the road. So that's Alex Buncombe who's on track. Alex Buncombe not showing on the leaderboard. I think that's another car that lost a lap or so at the start of the race. Alex has suffered a fair bit in these races with his internet ban, hasn't he?
Yeah, Alex Buncombe missed the start of the race. I don't know whether that was because of internet or other issues, but both he and Vitantonio Liuzzi were pit lane starters effectively. They were able to join the race, but they did join the race perhaps even half a lap down. So we saw issues with him in the first, no, it was a charity race that he had problems with. That's in right, Monza. Yes. Yeah. He was okay at Silverstone, but maybe again issues here.
I know the feeling. Now we've got Chris Froggatt into the pit lane, I think, for his drive-through. So he's going to drop down the order now. Over the line there goes Seb Morris. You can see Froggatt in the pit lane, serving that drive-through penalty. The lead gap of 15 seconds, an outstanding effort this from Lorenzo Marcucci up front.
Well, I don't know whether he's been driving just simply quicker than the field or whether he just maintained a strong pace every lap on lap on lap, and the following cars have been dropping back. Certainly those that have been involved in battles will have lost time, and that's the benefit. We saw it at Silverstone with Jordan Pepper. We're seeing it here with Marcucci. So up the hill, and Kang Ling, 15th place. You got the Ferrari 9.5, or just almost 10 seconds behind Molina. So he's going to be, I would say, comfortable, if you can never be comfortable in 15th position.
I don't know what you mean. It's interesting there to see who's behind him. Some star names. So into the last 10 minutes, and I think we've now lost Albert Costa. Oh no, he is still circulating, forgive me, down in 16th place after the penalty that he was given.
And also, I found where Fabrizio Cristani is. He was one of my favourites. Started front 2 rows, 3 rows. He's down in 22nd place. Why? Well, I don't know. Maybe Ben has got an insight into why the McLaren of Cristani, which looked to be a potential race-winning car, failed or faded so quickly in the early lap.
Try and unravel that. Just going back to Albert Costa, 2 penalties apparently he's had. 30-second penalty for the contact, and also a drive-through for track limits. So Albert Costa, first of all, penalised, as I say, for the contact, and then that second penalty for track limit abuse. So that was why we had the Costa drive-through, as it were. Kang Ling up the curb, 14th place. And 8.5 minutes are on the clock, and Lorenzo Marcucci, Ben, I think, has never had a drive as easy as this up front.
Having to pace himself now, though. I've finally got my timing screen working, and he is about 2 seconds off the pace that he was able to do at the start of the race. So I think tyres are now a factor, and he's halfway around the lap and already lost a second on his best lap. So, I mean, he's able to do it. He just needs to pace himself to get to the line, but he's certainly not running at ultimate pace right now.
Well, he's got a 15-second advantage over the second place Audi, so if the lead Audi is beginning to sort of wane a little bit in terms of ultimate lap times, I'm sure that'll apply to the second place Audi of Pereiros as well. But I think to try to explain why maybe some cars have a tendency to drop off their pace, it comes down to how you set your car up and how you use your tyres. And some brands in particular go more aggressive in the kind of rear geometry that they might use, as we look at this battle going on between Fuminelli and Famin up at Lake Coombe. So it's how you set your car up, and you can set it up to be quick in a lap, or you can set it up to do a race, a 1-hour race. Teams try to find a middle way through both those options, but in some cases they're committed to one or the other. They don't find that middle road, so they have to go either aggressive or go passive.
Well, still with this lead gap of 15 seconds, it's looking very good indeed, isn't it, as far as the Marcucci Audi is concerned. Obviously lapping in last time, 2:19, so being able to do a good comparable pace all the way through this, good consistent stuff. Delatraz fourth, not doing anything, unfortunately, about catching the top three, just cannot get there in time.
Just the pole position for this race was Marcucci with a 2:16.1. So he's running just under 3 seconds probably off the ultimate pace, but that would have been done when the car would have been in its preferred, if you want to call it, qualifying setup.
And you can see on that totem pole, the leaderboard, just how many people have got penalties in this race, just how many people have been abusing track limits, because that's where those 30 seconds tend to come from as the race nears conclusion. So Marcucci leading the way, Ivan Pereira second. It's a 1-2 for Audi. Now, of course, think forward to the next round. That's not great news because of the amount of ballast that they are going to have to take forward as a brand. The way that this works is you get ballast applied to all of the cars that have been in the top three. So whichever brands are in the top three, 25, 17 and 10, ballast applied for the top three finishers. And then if it's 2 or more cars in the top three, you add that together, it could be that Audi is going to be very heavy indeed when we get to the next round of the championship at the Nürburgring.
Well, Nürburgring is a totally different racetrack to Spa Francorchamps. It's a lot more stop-go, so that will then put a penalty onto braking. It'll put a load onto your tyres, which you don't really want, particularly at Nürburgring. You've got that long sequence of leading, and that's where it's hard work if you've got to carry that additional weight.
Absolutely right. 5 minutes are on the clock here, and we're not done yet because Jody Fannin is still fighting with Scott Malvern. Bentley versus BMW, and David Fuminelli, despite having a 30-second time penalty to add at the end of the race, he has managed to get himself onto the back of them as well as Jody Fannin goes deep into Bruxelles, runs out wide. Job done. Fuminelli goes through on the inside there.
That's what you look for. You look for a driver to make a small error and open the door. Makes your overtake so much more simple and straightforward, and you haven't had to compromise anything. Just thank you very much. That was a pass I hadn't anticipated, and I'm going to not give it back to you because I've now got my sights on 8th place Scott Malvern in the Bentley, and Fuminelli with, 4 minutes and 40 seconds remaining. He's going to close the back of the Bentley. He's done so coming into Fagnes, but then, well, it's another 2.5 laps, this lap and 2 more laps before the checkered flag will fall.
Indeed so, and as we see Scott Malvern go through, David Fuminelli, having gained that place from Jody Fannin, will lose it, of course, at the end of the race when you put the 30-second penalty into the mix. Ferrari goes through Paul Frere corner and up now towards Blanchimont. Clock ticks on down. Remember, the flag comes out the first time the leader crosses the line once the R is up, and it will be coming out of the bus stop. So we start and finish in completely different places at Spa 4. GT racing for the total 24 hours of Spa, which this is a snapshot in a sense. Out of the bus stop now, up through the gears comes Malvern, Fuminelli behind him, and Jody Fannin rounding out the top 10 on the road, but will do better than that on the corrected times. Of course, there's Ben Tusting's 30-second penalty as well, so what you're seeing on the track isn't necessarily going to be reflected post-race because of all the penalties to be applied and how that's going to affect the order.
David, I just did one of those switches from one screen to the other and just had a quick look, and as I looked at that onboard photo, onboard the Ferrari, it just looked so real. The glare through the windscreen, the dirt on the windscreen as well. This game, I said, of course, a competition, it does benefit from being the newest sim that's on the market, but the texturing and the way that this game looks, the long shadows, again, something you can't do in other platforms, to have a different time of day and a different time, and you can run a full 24-hour race in this game if you fancied, and it's just amazing to see those examples being played out in front of us right now.
De Lorenzi running wide in a lot of parts of the racetrack, coming into Fagnes, then into Stavelot and up the hill through Paul Frere curb, so he needs to be careful. He's running currently in a podium standing position, so don't abuse track limits. You've done enough, you don't want to do any more.
Well, it's been a good drive, hasn't it, by De Lorenzo, this, as he accelerates now down towards the bus stop. And actually, he's only 1.6 seconds back from Pereira, so there is the Audi. Now, could this be on before the very end? Look back from the Audi, up through the gears, over the timing line. There's probably only time for one more lap. They might just squeeze 2 out of this. Let's keep an eye relative to the race leader against the clock. but the pressure is going to come now on Pereiras as he heads downhill. He knows the Audi well. It's the car he normally races from GT4, graduating to GT3 last year. But behind him, the charging Luigi Di Lorenzo. He's certainly going after him. 1.5 seconds at the last sector point. Climb the hill. This is Pereiras looking back. There is the Aston Martin. And that should work well, John, on this section of circuit.
Yes, but I think that the Audi's got sufficient in hand. It's got a 1.5 second advantage when they came across the finish line. So I don't think, in which we can't anticipate, that Ivan Pereiras will lose. But you can look, just see how quickly the Aston actually has closed down on that run up the Camel Straight into Les Combes, through Malmedy. Let the car run wide, but be careful of those track limits. Then downhill, the downhill braking always. Aston gets his nose in, makes a 2 apex corner at Bruxelles. So he thinks there's an opportunity. It's going to be difficult. The gap, as I say, 1.3 seconds, currently in real time 1.3 seconds. So response from Pereiras to the charging Di Lorenzo.
It's come down a fraction, therefore. Really, Di Lorenzo's best chance is that Marcucci is so far up the road they can get another lap out of the race that might give him a little bit more time to bring the gap down yet further. He's certainly not giving up, though. Here they come through the pith path, this time right and then left. So the Aston Martin in the Birol Art colours, the one-owned kart team, they're into the campus right-hander now. Jody Fannin goes through, still running 10th on the road, closing onto the back of Scott Mulvern. Now, where is the race leader in relation to 22 seconds on the clock? Can Marcucci squeeze one more lap out of this? Let's see.
Just gone over the line, actually.
Right.
Just, as you were speculating, about 40 seconds to go, he managed to get across the line.
Okay.
And Mulvern has lost a position to Fuminelli, as we saw. It was at the bus stop chicane. Nice clean pass from Fuminelli down the inside, and Mulvern didn't fight it, but it's still going to be good. Finish. Actually, it doesn't matter because Fuminelli's got a 30-second penalty, so we can let him go, and Mulvern will still actually finish in 7th.
Yeah, doing the right thing, isn't he? We also just saw Michael O'Brien ahead here in the purple McLaren, go ahead of Brian Heitkotter. Michael doing different colour schemes for different rounds, second-generation racer, and there is the penalised Fuminelli ahead of Scott Mulvern. Right, so the hour is up. It's almost 10 past 8 local time, and there is the race leader in the traffic, soon to become the race winner, Lorenzo Marcucci. John Watson, he has dominated this race from pole to seemingly a race win, and he's not put a wheel wrong.
We haven't actually seen a huge amount of him to see if he had put a wheel wrong, in fairness, but clearly, look, it's been a masterful drive to not make an error, to not be forced into maybe making a small mistake, especially on that opening lap through Eau Rouge, and then that run up the hill, up the Camel Straight, where it's so easy to get mugged as you come into Les Combes. Outstanding drive, and it's still, half a lap of this 1 hour race, but effectively, unless something totally unforeseen was to happen, this is going to be maybe one of the sweetest victories that Marcucci will have enjoyed in his race career.
And here's a guy that's been on the fringes, if you like, of international racing. He's raced in a bit of GT4, he's done that Euro NASCAR series, but now making GT3 people sit up and take notice. Ivan Pereiras is there in 2nd place, but he is being reeled in by Luigi Di Lorenzo. That gap is down to 9/10 of a second, so we'll talk the race leader across the line, Marcucci, but it's all kicking off for 2nd place because the gap between Audi and Aston Martin is coming down and down and down. Lorenzo Marcucci then is heading for honours in round 2 of the SRO E-Sport GT Series. He's got the run through Blanchimont and then the bus stop still to go. And he's very nearly started round 3 at the Nürburgring. So far ahead is he, but Marcucci for Audi then goes right and left. Lorenzo Marcucci for LP Racing is going to win the pro race here at the Esports Total 24 Hours of Spa. Over the line, Lorenzo Marcucci wins round 2 of the championship. Now look back, who is going to be second, Pereiras or Di Lorenzo? Because the gap between the pair, 9/10 at the last sector timing point. And is it going to be Pereiras who hangs on in there? The answer is yes, he comes across the line 7/10 ahead of Di Lorenzo. And then we wait and see Delatraz set for 4th. That'll be good for him in the championship. We'll try and work out some crude points in due course, but Delatraz is going to take 4th place, 5th Luca Giotto, 6th, good drive by Dan Wells. Now 7th over the line, but with a penalty, is Ben Tusting. 8th over the line, but with a penalty David Fumanelli. So up will go Scott Mulvern and also Jody Fannin, who came home in 9th and 10th places.
Actually, David, they haven't yet finished, and they're going side by side into the bus stop chicane. Very, very excited between the three of them, and it's been going like this for the last couple of laps, but Fannin slots in behind and decides against trying to pass Mulvern. So a great finish for British GT there with the Bentley ahead of the BMW.
So the Team Parker Bentley ahead of the Valkenhorst BMW, and then Ben Tusting coming through to be credited in 9th place, with David Fumanelli in 10th. So Lorenzo Marcucci takes the race win. 27 laps done by the race winner in, what was it, 62 minutes, 9.386 seconds. That was the time taken for Marcucci to dominate here. 15.4 seconds the margin. So that was a mighty impressive drive by Lorenzo Marcucci from Ivan Pereras in 2nd place, and then Luigi Di Lorenzo in 3rd. We've got another race still to come. That's going to be for the silvers, in other words, the drivers that are used to the sim world. And again, that's got a hugely jumbled grid, so there's a lot to look forward to in that. That'll be coming up shortly. We can, though, first of all, reflect on what we've seen in the pro race. And hopefully, Jack Nicholls will be able to have a word with some of our victorious drivers. And no doubt, Jack, with an absolutely delighted, dominant race winner, Lorenzo Marcucci.
Yeah, what a performance that was.
Drive.
Absolutely unbelievable. Just disappearing away from the rest of the field like that was really quite something. You can see the full results there on the left-hand side. And you were talking about crude maths. Well, I am the king of crude maths. So by my calculations, Luigi Di Lorenzo is now top of the standings, 27 points for him. So that takes him 2 clear now of Jordan Pepper, who was the first race winner at Silverstone. Then Ben Barnicoat still 3rd in the standings, but Louis Delatraz, with 2 solid finishes now at Silverstone and here at Spa, moves up to 4th in the standings on 16 points. So a great effort from Di Lorenzo, and really impressive to see his disappearance up at the front. But so many questions to be answered from races like this, aren't there? You know, you think of Raffaele Marciello, who was running so well early on, and then suddenly he was out of contention. Same is true of Cristani as well, who qualified on pole, of course, for the Silverstone race. But Lorenzo Marcucci, Ivan Pereras, and Luigi Di Lorenzo completing the top 3, as David says. Hopefully, we'll be able to speak to some of them. But Watty, that dominant drive from Lorenzo Marcucci really kind of puts him as one to watch, surely, for the rest of the year.
Well, what I thought was interesting was when he did get those onboard shots from the cockpit of the Audi, was the way his steering inputs, for example, everything was done just so, almost you might say, gently. There was no aggression, there was no panic about it. He was totally on top of the task he had here this afternoon. And once he got the nose of his Audi into the lead, there was no, I doubt he even looked in his mirrors at any point, because he was never, ever even challenged. Nobody even got a sniff of the rear of that Audi. Great drive, and a new name, a name we've got to keep an eye out, albeit there will be weight carried, extra weight carried in Nürburgring. So what that will do to the performance of the Audi, we will have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to see, isn't it? And the interesting thing, I think, is that the points don't, because it's still points for the top 10. So even though we've got this huge grid, the points are not changing a huge amount, because you've still got Jordan Pepper there, 2nd in the standings, Ben Barnicoat still 3rd. So even if you have one bad race, you can still be relatively in contention. Hopefully we'll be speaking to some drivers in a couple of moments' time before we get underway with the silver race, which will have Andrea Capoccia on pole position for Audi, Hani Al-Sabti alongside him in the Lexus, and then Kamil Franchak in the Lamborghini. We'll talk more about that in a couple of moments' time, but it is Luigi Di Lorenzo now who leads the SRO E-Sports GT Series after the 2nd round at Spa. As David says, next week will be the 3rd round of the championship at the Nürburgring. But yeah, David, the points going from 1st to 10th mean that as long as you get a decent result, you can kind of stay in the mix, even if you don't score big.
you're right, but you also have to bear in mind that it's not a very long championship, is it? Because
yeah, that's true.
we have the Nürburgring, as you say, in a week's time, and then we go to Barcelona, and we have the final round of the championship, which is still to be decided, because that's going to be voted for by all of you, everybody, the fans, to come up with the venue that you'd like to see the cars at. So, we've only got 3 more rounds. It's a short, sharp championship. So, yeah, you're not necessarily out of the game, but if you have one bad race and somebody else has 2 good ones, then it's very hard to make up that, especially given that the difference between points for first and third is 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been joined by Ben Barnicoat, who is third in the standings, as we were just talking about. Ben, good afternoon. Talk to us about your race.
Oh, well, there's a lot to talk about, really.
Yeah.
I mean, struggled a bit all week for pace. I didn't seem to have the pace of the front runners. And then in the race, started 22, had a decent first lap, and then came through Blanchimont on lap 2 in the driver in the Nissan Heights Cotta, I think it is. He just span in front of me, and I braked to try and miss him. Then Pepper hit me, and we all just had a big crash. And yeah, I had to pit for repairs, but these things happen. It's just part of the game. Quite happy to hear I'm still in third in the championship. To be honest, I was expecting a bit worse.
Yeah, well, like you say, because Jordan Pepper was involved in that fight, all of you were kind of out of the running. Are you looking forward to the Nürburgring next week? Do you know why you were off the pace here?
Well, I mean, so obviously I had a good setup at Silverstone and it was working well. Crestani helped me out there. He didn't give me his setup, which I heard a couple of guys say. He just helped me with it. But that didn't really happen this week, unfortunately, due to a bit of love loss from the last race. But yeah, looking forward to going to Nürburgring. Hopefully, without the weight, we'll be a bit more competitive there and can just get some points, really. That's what it's all about. Today was messy. This whole week's messy, so I'm going to have to work hard to make sure we're back at the front.
David, anything to ask?
No, I was just interested in hearing what Ben's saying and talking about what to do for the next round, and I'm illustrating the commitment you guys are all putting into this. It's easy to perhaps still look down on sim racing. It's not real racing, but you guys are all testing, doing practice races, looking at data and wanting to improve, taking this as seriously as real world racing, aren't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly for me, I'm probably finding this harder than the real thing, because to get the car set up without that bump feeling is really, really difficult, and something that I'm having to learn a lot about. So I'm kind of relying a little bit on other people to steer me in the right direction a bit. I mean, my race pace was better here than qualifying pace. I couldn't really seem to get much more out of it in qualifying. So yeah, we're taking it super serious, and obviously for this one we had 2 weeks, whereas next week we've only got 4 or 5 days. So yeah, I'm going to be spending a good few hours on it every day, which was frustrating this week in the lovely UK weather, but hopefully this week it's going to be a bit worse and I won't feel so bad.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ben. Best of luck for next week.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Catch you later. We've also got Davide Brivio joining us from Kunos, who developed the Assetto Corsa Competizione game. Davide, what did you make of that race, the second round of the championship in the SRO E-Sport GT Series?
Well, first of all, hi everyone. Hi everyone also the live stream chat. Yeah, it has been a great round. Drivers are getting used to racing procedures into the sim. So I think you noticed especially the starting of the race was cleaner than before. They're taking that seriously, practicing a lot. And yeah, I really have to say a big thank you to all especially the pro drivers, because not all of them was practical into sim racing, and they're approaching it the very best way they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you looking for in the silver race that we have coming next?
Well, it will be a 60-minute race on a 2 minutes and 20 circuit where literally everything can happen. Let me remind you that due to the BOP that we precisely replicate into the game, and so as you also know from the real series, what's happening in the qualifying is always much different from the race, at least on provisions. So I expect a lot of cars to have much less problems on pace because of tire consumption and fuel management. And yeah, so I think it will be a great fight. These drivers are incredibly close one to each other. So looking forward for that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, Davide. Enjoy the second race.
Bye, guys. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. So let's move our focus now then onto the Silver Cup race, which will be getting underway in just a couple of moments' time. The cars are about to start in the formation lap. Andrea Capoccia for Audi is on pole position. Hani Al-Sabdi in the Lexus is second on the grid. Kamil Franchak is third in the Lamborghini. But, David, we have the same, as we look at the standings here, we have the same scenario where the championship leaders from Silverstone are a long way down the order. Patrick Selva leads the championship on 28 points. He leads the championship, but he's 28th on the grid. Arthur Kammerer is second. He's 29th on the grid. And once again, it's the third place man, David Tonitza, who's got into the top 10 in his Ferrari.
Yes, and part of this is, again, because of the ballast, because McLaren did so well at Silverstone, having two cars in the top three. It's 42 kilos that have been added to every McLaren, so Patrick Selva really struggles. But Arthur Kammerer, don't forget, is another of the McLaren drivers, so he cops for that as well. Even though he wasn't the race winner, he still gets a huge amount of weight. We saw what can happen in the pro race with so much kicking off at the start. If you think back to Silverstone, the Silvers, these drivers more used to sim racing, were perhaps a little bit better behaved. So whether we're going to have the same shuffling of the order in this race, which in part depends on people making errors, we'll have to wait and see. But again, this is going to turn the championship upside down. That is for sure. It's another huge grid, and it's going to be another very lively race. Of that, I think we can be pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Constanduros, looking at the sim races, I've been impressed with the pro drivers actually, because that last race felt okay. There was some chaos, but it felt a bit more like a sim race as these pro drivers get more and more used to racing virtually.
We've seen some fantastic racing over the last couple of months in sim racing, and we have provided the very pinnacle, I feel, of the racing here on the SRO eSports. This will be super pro, margins super tight. We probably won't see as many driver penalties. I think we only saw 6 at Silverstone over 15 that we got from the real pro race, and the cars are now just about able to head out onto their rolling up lap. Interesting to see a Lexus at the front of the field. And if you look at that timing board, the top 25, not a single McLaren. So I'm going to be keeping my attention on the back of the field to see if those championship leaders get through the first couple of laps cleanly, because that's important.
Yeah, well, once again, the cars then on their formation lap, this 1 hour race for the Silver Cup class, which is for the sim racers. The pro race already won by Lorenzo Marcucci with a dominant drive up at the front for Audi. Luigi Di Lorenzo with a third place finish moves him to the top of the standings in the pro class. But with the formation lap underway, it's time to hand over once again to Ben Constanduros, to John Watson and to David Addison.
Jack, thank you very much. We're almost good to go racing here for the second round of the SRO E-Sport GT Series, the Silver Series. These drivers, all the experienced drivers from the sim racing world. Andrea Capoccia, as you've heard, starts alongside Hani Al-Sabti on the front row, Kamil Franchak and Giovanni De Salvo on the second row. Giorgio Simonini, 8th in the championship, goes from row 3 alongside Tobias Pfeffer. 5th in the championship, the seemingly perennially unlucky Amir Hosseini. He will start on the inside of row 4 alongside the Porsche of Jan-Marcel Dietrich and the 5th row Enzo Bonito. 7th in the title race, and David Tonitza, who is 3rd in the championship. Behind them, starting 11th, newcomer Tim Heinemann. Now, he's an experienced sim racer. He's also a very competitive GT4 real-world driver for the HWA Race Lab team. He will be taking to the track this weekend alongside Chris Herker, ahead of David Greco, Danilo Santoro, Kamil Pavlovsky, James Parker, and on and on and on goes this bumper grid until you get to Albert Garcia at the very back. Now, one that might be missing, I think it's technical problems, is Furkan Özkan, whose BMW, number 37, may be missing from the grid, Ben Constanduros. That's one for you to see if you can ferret out in your perambulations up and down the pit lane. But as the cars head downhill and get themselves shortly ready to go racing, John Watson, this again is going to be a fascinating race, and interesting once more to see the way that Audi has, just as we saw in Pro, taken to the front in silver as well.
Well, it may well be, David, a case of the first man into Eau Rouge is the first man to take the checkered flag, and the way that Audi have performed in the pro race, the professional drivers race, and just ran off and hid, you might think that Andrea Capoccia could do a similar thing. Because clearly Audi have got something that's working really, really well. And, of course, they're not carrying the ballast, the dreaded ballast, which really is nailing the performance of those teams and cars that were so successful back at Silverstone. So that the balance penalty, when I was listening to what Ben Vandercoat was saying, it clearly is a bigger penalty than the actual, the weight is itself. It has a bigger effect on the handling, getting the car set up. So, looking at what we're seeing now, this is the front of the row, the grid, the Audi and the Lexus. And I mean, the Lexus actually had a strong race at Silverstone. The car that I'm going to keep an eye on will be the Mercedes of Amer Hosseini, who you may remember drove a really strong, I named him my driver of the race actually, because he drove such a good defensive race when he was being mulled all through up until maybe 10 laps or 10 minutes before the end. But it ought to be right now, from what we've seen just a few minutes ago, another Audi victory.
Well, let's see whether that is going to be the case. The man that's on pole, Andrea Capoccia, was 30th at Silverstone. The man alongside him, Hani Al-Sabti, in the Lexus there, was 47th at Silverstone. So here are two drivers with nosebleeds. They're so far up the order here. Are they going to stay there? All is about to be revealed. They will turn through the bus stop and then, in this Noah's Ark 2x2 formation, get themselves ready for that shorter first lap, because they will start, don't forget, on the run down towards Eau Rouge, as befits the Total 24 Hours of Spa. So although at the moment, look, Capoccia tries to get away, I think one or two drivers forgetting where the start is for this. There is a driver's briefing for these races, just like for the real world. Peter Roberts, the race director, will have made the point to them, clarified it with us last night. As they come down towards La Source, they'll be getting themselves ready to go racing. Ben, quick word, have we got any pit lane starters, anybody with dramas? What do you know?
You mentioned the one driver that doesn't seem to have appeared in the server. Everyone else is in there. No one's starting from pit lane, and they've just got to observe these boxes that Assetto Corsa give them. I'm also a bit concerned about the clouds as well. It looks like quite an overcast evening here at Spa.
There is a chance of rain for this race, I understand. It can be set in the game server, in the parameters on which we run, so it might be that we get some spots of rain for these drivers because they're more used to sim racing and what that can throw at you. However, round two of the Silver Series in the SRO E-Sport GT Series is go. Good getaway by the poleman Andrea Capoccia as they drop downhill then for the first time. Hani Al-Sabti goes second. It's Audi ahead of Lexus then as they power uphill for the first time. Do they all make it safely through Eau Rouge? So far so good, but there's drama in the background. 1, 2, 3 go off the road. Nobody else gets involved, but that's going to shuffle the back of the pack. Yellow flags will come out as the leaders go toe-to-toe. Al-Sabti on the outside line in the Lexus. Got his nose in front, couldn't grab the lead, but off the road goes Capoccia across the curb, and he's second as they come out of Lincoln. John, you could see that one coming.
Well, the Lexus had the grunt up the hill, managed to get up into position, and maybe an overreaction from Capoccia. He just made that error, took too much going into the corner, ran off the outside, and then, of course, he's up the lead, and the lead is all important. Lexus has got that lead. He's actually managed to pull just under half a second in the space of 3 corners. All of a sudden, Capoccia, who really had this race to lose, maybe he's lost it in the first third of the lap.
Well, let's see. There's a long way to go, as they say, as you look at number 313 heading down the hill. That is Danilo Santoro, 26th at Silverstone, going nicely here. Santoro running in that leading gaggle thus far as they head now through the pith-path for the first time.
We did lose 3 cars at the bottom of Eau Rouge there. Kieran Prendergast went off in the Ferrari, Josh Martin as well, and David Plainton. They're all 3 now running, but they're off the tail of the long queue of 46 starters.
So it's going to be hard to make progress up through that, isn't it? But you never know. 92 going through, that's Amer Hosseini. Here's the replay of the start, John.
Yeah, the Ferrari there, you see, clips the side of the Bentley, spins it around, and then I think it was from the Lexus, I'm not sure. There's all 3, there was nowhere to go. The gap was closing both on the racetrack, but actually in the runoff before there was contact with anything solid. So, and contact again up at the... One of the Audis was tagged from behind, that was being spun round.
There's a Porsche in the walls as well, yeah.
Messy. I mean, I thought the sim racers race at Silverstone was exceptionally clean. This has been far from clean in this opening lap.
Yes, you're right. It's been a bit messy to say the least, hasn't it? And so let's see who has been affected out of that. One of the Rover liveried Porsches, could have been Jan Masson Dietrich, was off the road at any rate. So it's Al-Sabti who's picked up the race lead now over Capoccia after that moment at Lincoln. So the Lexus lead, and you see how many liberties are being taken there coming up through Radion. That's going to attract the attention of officialdom if you are gaining too much time by running so far off the racetrack.
Don't think he gained particular time, but certainly he would have maybe lost time had he not made that error. So he would have been probably caught by these three charging two Lamborghinis, certainly coming up the hill into Les Combes. But he didn't make time, but it's a judgment the stewards will look at, and suspect he'll get the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Well, Al Sabti still leads the way. The Lexus has the advantage as you look at Enzo Benito's Ferrari for the FDA Hublot Esports team, battling downhill and forcing the Audi out wide there. That's the Tobias Pfeffer Audi. Now Pfeffer started 6th on the grid, but has just been mugged for that place as they come into Pouhon now.
There was a big mess of cars at the chicane, kind of all concertinaed through the whole field at the bus stop, and it did affect our championship leaders, both Niels Naujoks and Stelva, both getting involved. They've got scratches on their cars. There'll be a little bit of damage. They won't be running quite as well as they would have been if they were completely clean, and the drivers will feel that damage.
Yeah, but the damage is done by that contact in the opening lap, and they will not be able to make the ground up and put themselves back into even a point scoring position by the time we get to the end. 55 more minutes of this race to run.
And of course, as McLaren drivers, they've got to lug around 42 kilos of ballast anyway, so the platform is able to take account of that. The cars, their pace compromised anyway, even before the incident. Now, here, look, the yellow Audi of Tobias Pfeffer is on the attack, but he's also coming under attack. That's David Tonizza's Ferrari. Through, there's a little brush. Tonzilla sticks out his elbows, and through he goes. Side by side over the timing line. Tobias Pfeffer, who keeps on shifting cars as he tries to get himself further up the order, now goes through, gets the place back on the inside line. So Pfeffer not giving up against Tonizza. You're riding with Tonizza briefly there through La Source, and now past the endurance pits down towards Eau Rouge once again. Al Sabti the leader from Capocchia, but this is a much tighter lead battle, John. Not yet 4 tenths between them.
No, we're not seeing the kind of break that we saw in the pro race a few minutes ago. Again, cars cutting inside at the top of radio. In fact, I think it was the same Mercedes that we saw do it a lap ago. So maybe that will become something that the race director will have a look at as we see a challenge coming up the hill, up to Les Combes. Ferrari goes to the left, cannot find a way around the long way around Les Combes. Gets, he nearly got the nose of the Ferrari alongside, but the Mercedes comes up the inside. That's the car that Heinemann, who's been making on 2 laps consecutively. Well, no gain, but he's not been losing time, and that's the question. If he had stayed on racetrack, maybe he would have lost time.
Heinemann could be a man to watch in this, as I was saying before the race started. He's a real-world racer, GT4 experience, the Nürburgring 24 hours of experience, for example, as well as sim knowledge. So Heinemann could be one to watch over the course of the hour. We've done 2 laps. It is still Al Sabti up front with Capocchia second, and then third is Giovanni De Salvo at the moment, who started on the 2nd row of the grid. Through goes 95 Ferrari of David Tonizza, running in 8th place, but Heinemann bringing Santoro, Pavlovsky and Chris Hülke's Porsche with him for good company.
Impressive to see De Salvo running in a Lamborghini in this particular competition, because he's one of the leading contenders of the Porsche Carrera Cup Italia Esports Championship, one of the oldest running esports championships that Porsche have supported in Italy, way before even Germany. So he's been a leading contender the last couple of years, racing Enzo Benito in that, never having been able to win it, but he's been very, very close. Battle for the lead. Hani Al Sabti, half Dutch, half Indian, and he retired on lap 1 at Silverstone in his Lexus, and now leading this, but only just.
Only just, the key words, absolutely, because the recovering Andrea Capocchia has certainly not given up. And then have a look at the Lamborghini in 3rd place, because De Salvo is getting closer and closer all the time, whilst these two start squabbling. 3 laps are in the book then now as they come down towards Eau Rouge once more, and Al Sabti is just not getting away, is he?
No, and I think the pace of the Audi is going to be slightly quicker over the next couple of laps. I mean, whether the difference in skill behind the wheel is going to make a difference or not, but the Audi would appear, based on what we've seen earlier this afternoon, just to be the car that's working best up the hill. Now, this is the point on the opening lap where that lead was lost, a mistake by Capocchia. So he's trying to recover, he's closing, he can't get any closer right now on this part of the racetrack. The Lexus is a big car, got a lot of grunt from that V6 turbo engine, so it'll be a task for the Audi to find its way through.
Absolutely, it will. And what about Hosseini in 4th place, the man that's 5th in the championship? What can he do here? 3.5 seconds back at the moment. Is he going to be able to get any closer? The leading Mercedes driver in all of this is Al Sabti in the Lexus. Hammers down towards Pouan once again, but Capoccia there drawing a little bit nearer as they swoop through that really fast downhill left-hander.
So not certainly lost. But they come out of Pouan down to Fagnes, the rear view, looking the Audi closing up a little bit on the entry point into the first part of Fagnes, then the cut back to the left, then the short run down to Campus, that tight right corner where it's easy to run very, very wide. You can see the Lexus, how wide it run. The Audi followed it. Now out of Stabilo, the Paul Frere curve, that's the exit of Stabilo itself, and then this long uphill climb up the other side of the valley, in fact, towards the bus stop chicane, but you've got to negotiate through Blanchimont. Big breath, keep the throttle open, flat out, but the gap still remaining pretty status quo. In fact, it's stretched, if anything.
It has, you're absolutely right, up to 6/10 at that last sector, so Capoccia now, if he's not careful, he's going to have to go defensive, and that will play right into Al Sabti's hands, won't it? Because there in 3rd place is Giovanni De Salvo in the Jean Alesi Esports Academy car. Meantime, Camille Franchak is under attack as he heads towards the line. Enzo Benito is alongside him. This is Lamborghini versus Ferrari. The two Italian brands absolutely together for 5th and 6th. Hard on the brakes, turning to La Source. Tobias Pfeffer's Audi arrives on the scene as well, and 8th is David Tonizza's Ferrari. So this is a great battle pack here, John, plunging downhill.
Yeah, Benito was looking to do something a little bit better in La Source, didn't quite work out. Following the Lamborghini down through Rouge, the compression, then radio on the car goes all airy-fairy, and I mean it in the best possible way, and then you're back onto the long Camel Straight.
Now, is this the chance for Pfeffer in the Audi to make a move? If it was, it's covered off instantly by Bonito. That puts Pfeffer onto the grass, does it? He's on the outside line. It's going to be really brave stuff. He rattles over the curb. Yes, he's done it.
Good pass. Worked hard for that. Touch and go whether he was going to get away with it. The Ferrari wasn't going to concede ground at all, but he was sufficiently far on the entry of the corner to get his nose at the transition from right to left, and then he took the position.
And just as he does it, Pfeffer is being given a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through for causing a collision on the opening lap of the race down at the bus stop, which did for Giorgio Simonini. So, one up and one down almost at the same time. So Pfeffer gains on the track but loses out, courtesy of the stewards.
Well, you can drive your race, and the rules, I mean, the regulations are regulated more tightly in sim racing than I'm thinking they're seeing in live racing when we return to Spa, which will be at the back end of October, I believe, for the Spa 24 Hours, the historic premier GT3 event in the world.
And also being given a penalty, Tim Heinemann, for causing a collision with number 98 early on in the race, 98 the Porsche. So Heinemann, I would say, could be a man to watch. I'm afraid he's going to be falling rather than gaining courtesy of a penalty. Looking at Chris Hooker going through. There he is, number 99. That is Camille Franchak, still running in 5th, but the penalised Pfeffer. I suppose it was a case of assault and Pfeffer, wasn't it? Anyway, he comes over the timing line, and Tobias is in 6th place. I was about to say, Ben, a lap or so ago, I'm not ignoring you, but they're all being well behaved. And all of a sudden, evidence came that they weren't being.
Yeah, and Antonio Garcia, another driver who's picked up an automatic drive-through penalty for track limits. Watching Camille Franchak here now, and the man who is effectively our reigning champion, because the SRO E-Sports is in its 2nd year. It ran as an on-site event throughout last year. 5 of the SRO, mainly endurance races, I think it was, including the Spa 24 Hours. And Camille Franchak gained himself a test in a Lamborghini at the end of the year, and kind of now forms the backbone of their esports effort. Lamborghini putting a huge amount of effort now into esports, and this is their premier team, thanks to Franchak and his championship win. Also, he's an airline pilot, not an airline pilot, a fighter jet pilot in his as his job. So he is used to going fast both at land and in the air.
So his career has really taken off.
There we go.
That's what you're trying to tell us. Thank you, Ben. Fascinating fact 37. There'll be more to come from Ben's Anorak pocket in due course. Franchak is running 5th. and doing a good job. Now, here is the lead battle. Al Sabti and Capoccia, totally different races they're having from, as we were explaining early on, what happened to them at Silverstone. And Al Sabti, even though he can't get away, John, is doing a good job of defending everywhere that Capoccia might want to challenge. The Lexus is already there.
I think it's clear to me that the Audi overall would be quicker in a lap if you could get break free from the Lexus. But what the Lexus has got those great strengths, and that's what's being used, and that's what's frustrating Capoccia in the Audi, because he can do nothing. He's so far had a look a couple of times, but never was able to get the Audi close enough. I mean, coming through Blanchimont, you think maybe have a chance coming up into the bus stop chicane. Well, the Lexus is using all the bits of the racetrack which are going to deny any opportunity. Closes the gap down. It's less than half a second here in the mid chicane, but under acceleration. Look at the Lexus pull away. Okay, it's accelerating slightly earlier than the Audi, but it's got that grunt, it's got that torque, and it's got the punch to get him out of the corner.
Can Capoccia, though, sit here for another 46 minutes? He's tantalisingly close, but he just hasn't yet been able to find a way back ahead. And, of course, the reason he's behind in the first place was making that error on the opening lap up at Les Combes.
Indeed, and all he can hope for is he can just keep applying the pressure. It depends how much reaction that pressure will create for the Lexus. But you can see coming at Eau Rouge, over the top, closing, stays to the right to defend the entry into Les Combes. The long way around, we saw that a lap or two ago. It is possible now, but never quite. He needs another half a car length to make that overtake. Certainly, the Audi has got the pace now on the inside, coming down into Bruxelles. This is going to be a pass.
Or it's going to be contact.
It's going to be both. I think it's going to be a contact and an overtake. That was well thought out, even better executed.
A good move, and it puts then Capoccia back into the lead of this second round of the SRO E-Sport GT Series silver competition. And now, having hit the front, can he gap at Hani Al Sabti? So the Lexus drops back into second place. The Audi, remember, the car that qualified faster than anything else on this grid, mirroring what we saw in the Pro Series, where Audi took pole, Audi took the race win. Now, barring a mistake, you might expect Capoccia to drive away, but Al Sabti is doing his level best to stay with him. But Ben, straight away, that gap has widened to what, 3-4 lengths?
Yeah, absolutely. Although you do like a slipstream around Spa, don't you? Those long stretches. It's good to have a slipstream, but I don't know if the Audi would have felt that good in the dirty air through some of the faster corners. We spoke about it in the pro race, that the car is a bit nervous when it comes to running in dirty air, so he'll be happy now to get clean air ahead and hopefully be able to preserve a bit of his tyres, because those tyres will be worked harder by sitting in dirty air.
Now, how the McLaren's getting on. Patrick Selva, the championship leader, is up into 17th, isn't he? Niels Neuert's behind him in 18th place. So they're making a little bit of progress, but of course the gaps are opening up all the while further up the road. So it's going to be hard to salvage much out of this. They can do all of this hard work and never get into the points even.
And when you're talking about it, it's side by side between those two. I've been monitoring them to make sure nothing dramatic happened between them, and they run side by side through the bus stop chicane, doing a lot better than off the camera, as you say. They are nowhere near the points yet, but they have been running well. Selva is holding on just ahead of Neuert's, but Neuert's again looks the faster of the two.
The big difficulty the two McLarens have got, 17th and 18th position, is the rest of the field directly ahead of are all car per car covered by just about a second, maybe under a second. So they're never going to get the opportunity, if once they break free of one of the cars they're trying to pass, they're never going to get back into the rhythm, because they're always going to be straight away back onto the tail of another car that will be acting defensively. It's not a great position to be in. 43 minutes is still quite a long way to go, and a lot can take place in that time. But every time the lap goes by, that's going to reduce your opportunities.
Well, Kamil Franchak here is on the tail of Amir Hosseini for 4th place. Down they come into Speaker's Corner through that left-hander. Why Speaker's Corner? Because from the old circuit's commentary box, it was the one place other than the start and finish area in Eau Rouge that you could see. And the commentators, the speakers, claimed it as their corner. And lower down the order is 189 Bentley. That is the Brit Jack Keithley. 21st at Silverstone, but going nicely here in 13th spot, but yet to break into the points.
Yeah, and this is not really Jack Keithley's preferred platform, I say, in terms of different types of game. Every game has a different feel. and he is an absolute master when it comes to other games, other platforms. But ACC is a very, very tricky one to master. Not so easy just to jump in and be quick. And Jack Keithley runs for Williams esports team, Formula One team. Have a massive platform of different drivers that compete across all forms and platforms of sim racing. And Jack is one of the leading lights, but I think it's taking him some time to find the secrets of ACC and to find the ultimate pace.
Okay, there are more penalties coming, which I'll get to in a second. But right now, Amir Hosseini, John, is the cork in the bottle, because here, Franchak is stuck behind him, and they're all queuing up behind as well, aren't they?
Deja vu! This is what it was like at Silverstone 2 weeks ago, where Hosseini managed to keep a chain of cars, maybe double the length this chain is right now. And finally, in the closing laps, he had to concede, and cars then were able to make their way through relatively quickly. But he's using, again, the strengths of his car. Mercedes is a great car around Spa Francorchamps, probably the car that gives a driver the easiest day's work of all the other brands that are going to be here. So he's defending. He's got Franchak in the Lamborghini, the quicker the car, closing. Will the Mercedes stay on the left and defend? Well, I'm not quite sure if he could have done a bit more, and it's a little bit messy on the entry into Lake Coombe, but forget, they go into Lake Coombe in the order they're going to come out of Lake Coombe.
And a really good example there, John, of what they call rubber banding, where the car is moving around in front and you're not actually sure where physically the car is, because graphically it's not being fully represented because of the internet connections. And we see very clearly there how nervous you would be if you were in the car behind. You can't really make a move because you don't actually really know where that car in front is.
And therefore, go back to a point you made in an earlier round about that little yellow icon next to Hosseini's car logo. He's got more yellow than other people. That means poor internet, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So his connection is not as good, and these drivers will be able to see, on, if they've chosen to, beside them, and they'll see a number telling them a numeric representation of what we see as a graphical yellow bar, and it does look like Hosseini has the worst connection of our whole grid right now.
So we've got some great little battles going on. Now, John, let's get excited about Porsches, shall we? Because Chris Hooker, their 12th place, trying to find a way past Tim Heinemann, although he's got a penalty anyway, Heinemann. And let's cut now to the next little battle coming through Blanchimont. 3-1-3 is Santoro, Danilo Santoro's John Alesi team Lamborghini, and it's Pavlovsky tucked up behind. These two very evenly matched indeed, aren't they?
Well, you'd expect sister cars from the same team would be, I mean, if they're not evenly matched, I would be kicking the door down on Jean Alesi's office and saying, why is my car not quicker? So they've done a good job with their cars. They prepared them equally. Both drivers very well matched. So how they're going to find a way to get past, how's the car running second in this group of cars going to get ahead of the car? Well, whatever, you know what I mean.
Just looking at this, the car of Pavlovsky is from the Thrustmaster team as opposed to the John Alesi squad. Now, about those penalties I was telling you about, 71 has got 15 seconds, Tiziano Brioni for an incident, and also 15 seconds slapped onto Moreno Sirica's Ferrari. Now, Camille Franchak makes the move against Hosseini up towards Lincoln. The Mercedes, he's going to run out of road over the curb, and that gift wraps fourth place for Franchak, John.
That Hosseini eventually had to concede ground, and once one car got through, then the following cars all managed to make their way through fairly quickly. So there's a case of just, ultimately the pressure told, the mistake came, and then the Lamborghini got through, and now will the Audi likewise. 187. Pfeffer, although he's got that penalty, but nevertheless Benito will be the next car along. He's only a tenth or so of a second behind Pfeffer. So Hosseini, once again, finding himself in a good position, but not being able to capitalise on it, and ultimately falling when the real pressure started to turn.
Well, now, what can Hosseini do to keep the rest of them behind? So he's down in fifth, he's got Pfeffer, but Pfeffer's got a penalty anyway, then Bonito, Tonitza, and a little bit further back, but catching Pavlovsky and Santoro. They've switched order, of course. Pavlovsky up ahead, Thrustmaster team ahead of Alesi team in the Lambo fight. So there's a little bit of shuffling going on there. Now the lead gap has certainly extended, Ben. 1.8 seconds. Capoccia, now that he's got back into the lead, he's getting away, isn't he?
Yeah, in terms of his last lap time, he's still in the 17s, so within 0.3 of his best lap. Interesting to see that actually the best laps are not much better than we saw from our pro drivers this week. Perhaps different track conditions. As a mistake there from Pfeffer. Pfeffer's kind of getting in the way here, considering his penalty, but both Ferraris, I think, will clear him. Enzo's gone past, and Tonitza has to slot in behind. Will he go up the inside at La Source?
Well, Pfeffer's going to try and fight back, isn't he? So he covers off one by attacking, but doesn't gain his position on the road back. Add 30 seconds, he's going to fall a long, long way down the order, isn't he, post-race? 36 minutes, still on the clock here. On board with Tonitza now, John.
Yeah, and interesting coming down into Eau Rouge. Gets the run into the corner. Bit of aero coming into it, but look, he's not really lost position. In fact, he's closing fractionally, almost overrunning the back of the Audi in the Kemmel corner. So he has to pull sharp out to the left. Now, and the Ferrari. The aero coming into play a little bit, that side aerodynamics. Can he go the long way around the outside? We've seen it done twice here this afternoon, and can he make it stick? Pfeffer is not going to give it up, and he stays on the inside for Malmedy, maintains his position, but maybe vulnerable coming down the hill into Bruxelles, but just enough of a gap to consolidate. Good racing.
Absolutely good racing, and Tonitza is, as Ben will confirm, a very proficient esports sim racer, Formula 1 esports champion last year, and here he is in GT3 sim machinery, trying to find a way past Tobias Pfeffer as they drop down the hill then. 10 laps are done, and Pfeffer, by defending, has dropped away a little bit from the traffic ahead, Ben.
What's key is that Tonitza and Ferrari came into Formula 1 year later than the rest of the Formula 1 esports grid and came in and won straight away, representing Ferrari kind of officially for the Formula 1 team, but now the Enzo Tonitza team is officially recognised by Ferrari as an esports team. And I think that's quite significant. Some of these drivers here are racing for proper manufacturers like Bentley and McLaren are really supporting, Lamborghini as well. Porsche in this particular championship, not really. Lexus, certainly not. Audi really don't have any kind of representation in esports at the moment. So there are different levels that we're seeing from our real-life manufacturers, as we've got Niels Naujoks trying to make up more ground, or losing a position, I think, actually.
Simonini was the one that came off worst by being crowded out. There, running off the road, is Vromont in the Lexus, so Naujoks does gain a place there, but Vromont will try and fight back, I think, as they come now. And also is Axel Petit joining in that mix. Yeah, Axel Petit is there too. So over the timing line they go. Niels Naujoks, we have seen with great speed, but also copping penalties in the charity race and the opening round of the Esports Championship. He's on the move as best he can be with 42 kilos extra in the McLaren. He's in 18th out of the points. Look back here from Jack Keatley's car, John.
Yeah, but he's got that Ferrari all over him like a rash, so he's got to be careful through Eau Rouge, not make a mistake. Wheel perfect on the exit out of Radio. Ferrari closing fractionally. You can see as the Ferrari gains the aero, again swings out to the left, up on the Kemmel straight. So Keatley is under pressure side by side all the way down into the braking distance, but the Ferrari being on the left, and he can keep his nose ahead. No, Keatley decides, I'm not going to concede my position and I'm going to maintain it, and he did so, and he did it fairly and cleanly.
So Jack Keatley hangs on to the place, and as they come now down towards the right hand of Bruxelles, Serica looks for a way back by. He's penalised as well, isn't he, Serica? So he's dropped back on the road and will drop back further, courtesy of 15 seconds that will be applied to him. 33 minutes and counting here. Conditions simulating 7:30 local time, so it's starting to lose light, the temperature drops, and Ben, the platform is able to take account of all of that as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's incredible how the feel changes as the temperature in the air and therefore the temperature on the track. It's only 21 degrees on track. That isn't particularly hot. So that's kind of not a particular, well, it's kind of this time of year at Spa, I suppose. 21 degrees in the air is not too bad, but because it's late in the evening, it's not soaking into the tarmac. There is this rumour of rain. There was a rumour of rain in the first esports event that we had as well at Silverstone. The key thing is, ACC is one of the only platforms that can really simulate rain properly. A lot of them have no graphical ability to do it. they can simulate the feeling of driving on ice, but you can't actually visually see it. So I'm excited when the race control or the guys that are organising this decide to switch that rain button on, because it just looks so immersive.
So when the rain button is switched on, is it literally your tap, or is it a drizzle like in the shower?
You can do whatever you like. You can drizzle up to thunderstorm, but they do recommend not grazing in a thunderstorm because it's so difficult.
Well, let's have a thunderstorm. These
it
are
wouldn't
the
be
experts.
smart without it, would it?
These are the sim experts. Let's see their skill in a thunderstorm.
I'm with you, John. Wouldn't be Spa without a deluge at some point. Moreno Sinica has a penalty, but he's also got himself back ahead of Jack Keithley on track. So the Ferrari goes ahead of the Bentley. We're looking back now from the Williams Esports drivers. Ferrari as he comes up towards Les Combes. Behind Jack Keithley, look, is Patrick Selva, the championship leader. So Selva 16th from 28th on the grid.
David, this is really interesting, these two, because they're both teammates at Williams Esports, but they're running different marks of cars. So they are unable to get into a private server, get into a private room and help each other with setup and things like that other teams, certainly Ferrari, will be doing. They'll be spending all week defining what they need to do to get the best out of their cars. We've got two Williams Esports drivers in two different marks here. Without being too critical, I'm not sure that's the best way forward.
But they're not racing as a team, are they?
They should be. If they were in the same car.
But they're not. It's different. And a Ferrari employee and when you race for Ferrari, you don't race for yourself, you race for Ferrari. But two employees in one Formula 1 team doesn't mean they're racing for the Formula 1 team. I think they're just racing for themselves.
Yeah, they both fall under the same team name, don't they? But I think you might be right here. It's every man for himself, and it's a pretty fierce fight on track as well, these two are having. It'll be interesting to see if Patrick Selva gets up with them, whether or not he can find a way by in that heavier McLaren as we look at the cars of Pavlovsky and Santoro here, which are 9th and 10th, the two Lamborghinis. 114 is Kamil Pavlovsky. And Danilo Santoro right back on his tail, look, as they come now over the timing line once more. And as they do so, we are just about now to nudge into the second half of the race. Long line of cars coming out of La Source. 13 laps are in the book. We're aiming for about the 27 lap mark by the end of all of this. That's what we had in the pro race, but that rather does depend on the race leader's pace. Our pro winner ran away and hit. Capocci did have to work his way back into the lead against Al Sabti. On board now with Enzo Benito, John, heading up to Les Combes.
Well, he's got a little bit of work to do. I mean, Hosseini in the Mercedes, he got mugged up here, what, 5 laps ago now, but he's got a comfortable gap coming into Les Combes. Doesn't have to worry about the Ferrari running behind. Is it going to dive bomb me or not? So I just can take my line, I can choose the entry point, I can choose the exit point. Everything is in control. Hosseini, I thought, might have suffered, as we saw at Silverstone once. One of the cars that was in that lead group of cars following the Mercedes, once that got through, then others would have followed, but he's consolidated and he's kept his 5th place for the last 4 or 5 laps.
Yeah, looking back from Hosseini's car now, Enzo Benito is behind, then the penalised Pfeffer, Tonitza, Pavlovsky, Santoro ran out the top 10 on the track. Expect this sort of a shuffle, of course, once all the penalties are factored in at the end of the race. Hosseini rides the curb, you can hear that as well. The simulation of everything is right. Ben touched earlier on the fact you can see the graining on the tarmac, you've got the sound effects of running over the curb and everything that's brought into this. And after a while, you forget you're watching a sim race, don't you?
I mean, certainly with the way it's graphically represented in this dusk setting, it just looks so magnificent. There's a huge difference actually in the conditions that these guys are racing in comparison to the pro race. Remember, we saw the sun beaming through the windscreen in the pro race. There certainly is no sun in this race, and I think that's why we're seeing these guys lapping at similar lap times to the pros, in that they just don't have that evening grip and evening temperature that the pros have.
Well, one of the things, Ben, you will notice that in the dropping temperatures, it may be to the disadvantage of stun, but it will help. And this issue about tyre wear, and we're talking about maybe Audis and other cars, maybe in these conditions, it actually, slightly lower temperatures, is favouring their car setups, where other cars, the Mercedes, we're just following the Mercedes here from on board the Ferrari, it maybe would like a little bit more ambient temperature to bring that car back to life. So it's an ebb and flow between the brands and how they respond to the various different temperatures.
Well, there you have on lap 15 the cars climbing out of Eau Rouge up through Radion, and Amir Hosseini under attack from Enzo Benito. Hosseini is in the Mercedes, Benito is in the red Ferrari, almost hidden under the rear wing. Now he makes the move to the inside line, diving up towards Lecombe. We'll see in a moment whether Benito goes through. The answer is no, he does not. Hosseini is able to defend, but as he defends, so he loses touch with the four ahead of him. And Enzo Benito now, the eSports Race of Champions winner of times past, he's getting ever more frustrated because he's stuck, can't find a way by.
Very difficult because Hosseini, he drives extremely well in a defensive manner. He doesn't do anything unkind or unfair. He's just got a very good car under him and he's using it to its maximum effect. The Ferrari, one would have thought, maybe would have had a little bit of extra speed with the benefit of the slipstream up into Lecombe to get into position, but he hasn't been so far able to make that work.
Past the field at the moment, still in terms of lap time, is the Audi of Andrea Capoccia, our leader. Absolutely flying, still in the 17s, nobody else anywhere near in the 17s. 2 minutes 18.3 for Al Sabti, 18.5 for Di Salvo, Franchak 18.3, Hosseini 18.7. So doing a great job stretching his advantage. And interestingly, looking at the entry list, very few Audis in this race. I'm even going to guess to say just the two, Tobias Pfeiffer and Capoccia. And Simonelli as well.
In the third, yeah, that's right. But it's not the favoured brand, but those that have done their homework have chosen well, haven't they? On board with Bonito then, in the FDA Hublot Esports team Ferrari, still staring at the back of Amir Hosseini with the Racing Line Motorsport Mercedes. They come over the timing line. The Rebellion clock ticks on down, 25 minutes and change now as they drop into La Source, 7:42 local time, and Hosseini doing a really, really impressive job, as at Silverstone, of being able to defend the place.
And he's just repeated, well, we're talking about it a number of times. Hosseini has got the car, he's got probably the most compatible driver machine in the field, and he's using it to his benefit and advantage. Whereas Benito, who's probably more experienced in terms of racing, maybe with a faster car in a single flying lap, but still has not been able to show any way of putting a threat onto that what currently is for 5th place Mercedes.
Now they're going through number 1, Niels Neujoks, who, remember, started way back on the grid 26th. He's 6th in the championship, and Neujoks is in, woohoo, 17th place, in other words, out of the points, but he's not done yet as he starts to close onto the back of number 240, Alexandre Vromont, with the Lexus. And
curiously,
yep.
he's got ahead now of Patrick Selva. Selva was a couple of positions ahead, so I think we've seen Selva with a mistake over the last couple of laps, and now he's back behind Neujoks. They've got their possibility. I mean, they are, with those penalties ahead, they are actually in the top 13, 14. So there's a possibility of 1 or 2 points for the top 10 at the end of the race.
Yeah, they're not done yet, I'll grant you. Ben, Niels Neujoks has been a talking point in all the races we've had thus far, be it this or Silverstone or the charity races at Monza. Good pace, bad luck in terms of penalties. What's his background in terms of sim racing?
Really interesting, actually. Niels was a champion in a game called Live for Speed back in the day, back in the late 90s. And he decided to get back involved in sim racing 2 years ago to take part in the Race of Champions, and did hot lapping competition, found himself very fast in Assetto Corsa, and on that event met the guys from Red Bull. At that point they were G2 Esports, and he became the team manager now of the Red Bull Esports team. So he looks after all the drivers in the Porsche Supercar or in the F1 game as well, but it turns out he's very fast himself. I noticed that in the entry list though, he's representing G2 Esports rather than Red Bull Racing.
Interesting, fascinating, isn't it, to see the careers people are making now out of esports. And it can't be long, for example, before the British Racing Drivers Club, that has Rising Stars and Superstars for young drivers, has an E-Stars programme, because
I like that.
Another element of bringing on young talent, and we're seeing a lot of it here on board with David Tonitza. Right, this surely, John, is the move against the Audi, isn't it? Here it comes to the outside.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, yes, no, yes. I mean, the Audi's still got a snooze ahead. Then can the Ferrari stay on the inside to take the left hand coming through? It's so. I mean, that was a good pass to get it down. That was a good pass. It was good because there was no contact. Both drivers respected, and bearing in mind the things that you were saying, Ben, about having visibility issues and knowing when a car is in a blind spot, actually, can you see it or not? That was good driving.
I was thinking the same thing as you were saying that, but even though it's all simulated, there isn't the tendency to bash and crash, and there have been a fair few stories about driving standards in other sim competitions of late, largely for single-seaters, but there, Pfeffer losing out then. So Tonitza goes ahead of him, and he's worked hard for that. For lap after lap, David Tonitza has challenged. Pfeffer is not out of the woods yet, because Pavlovsky and Santoro are closing up as well, aren't they?
We haven't had a lot of drama in this race, but I've just noticed we had the yellow flag flick up on the graphic at the top. So I had a quick flick, and we have lost Giorgio Simonini into the pits. So that is one of our Audis, unfortunately, with a problem on that last lap. Perhaps we'll find a replay of it.
Okay, Simonini was 8th at Silverstone. Yeah. Sorry, John.
Just watching this here on the Porsche, 22nd place, and. Seen that in the BMWs that come through the bottom into Stablo, out of Campos into Stablo, then exiting Spa Francorchamps up the hill, and this battle with Lucio in 22nd and Baba in the BMW. Well, this is a mile compared to the few corners ago.
Look at the way the BMW gets away, storms through Blanchimont, the gap stretching. But Luca Lucio trying to bring the gap down under braking, which he will do as he swings into the bus stop. The current iteration of the chicane at the end of the Spa lap. And now over the timing line, grandstand on the left, pit lane on the right, and the media centre and the race control building and the hospitality buildings. Meantime, out on track, Tobias Pfeffer is being given a really hard time now by Pavlovsky in the Lamborghini. Down they come to the bus stop. 1-1-4 is Pavlovsky, and Pfeffer catches the back of the Ferrari and turns 95 around. That is David Tonitza. He worked for so many laps to get ahead of the Audi, and then one tiny tag and he turns turtle on him.
And that was the tiniest of touches. I mean, barely perceptible, but that was enough to turn the Ferrari around. And again, undoubtedly, that will get some attention from race director, because it was all he had to do was turn the steering wheel a little bit more to the right to it would have avoided that contact.
So we'll keep you posted as to what happens next there. Ben will scour the race director channel for us, and also the general chat, because it could be that a few thoughts are offered by drivers in due course about that. We've also lost Tim Heinemann, haven't we, from some way. He's gone a long way down the order. Even allowing for his 30-second penalty, Heinemann has dropped back a long way. So there is Pfeffer, who already got 30 seconds worth of penalties, and has not endeared himself to officialdom any further. 20 minutes of this race to go. Capoccia making it a good day for Audi. And the point that Ben made earlier on about Audi having no real manufacturer presence in esports, I wonder if that might change. They've already, in the last few weeks, announced the brand's departure from DTM at the end of this season, whatever season the DTM has. Could it be that part of the restructuring, as well as looking at Formula E, might include a little bit more esports? Because there is already, of course, the customer racing program within GT3 and GT4. There, meantime, talking Audi, is 53. That is David Greco's car. David was 41st at Silverstone. He's 26th here, doing a good job ahead of Arthur Camara. Now Camara is second in the championship, but only 27th. So Camara's chances have not developed, one could say.
Well, very unlikely he's going to finish in any points here this afternoon, but certainly he wants to finish as high up, and he's certainly all over the back of the Audi as they were making their way up to the chicane. Again, you can see that Hosseini still is able to control the pace of Benito, and Benito has been closer and he's dropped back and closer. In fact, the gap between Hosseini, Benito and Pavlovsky, that seems to have stretched out. These three cars have pulled ground on each other.
News from the replay booth, been scouring to see what's been happening to Giorgio Simonini. He lost it all on his own at Radiant, top of the hill, the rear just breaking away and put it into the inside wall. So that's why he is now in the pits getting a repair and may even retire out of the race. Tim Heinemann was running down the inside of the recovering Tobias Pfeffer into La Source. They ran side by side on exit, and Pfeffer just put Heinemann into the wall, sent him spinning into the left-hand side. And of course, because of the damage of nosing his Mercedes into the wall, he's now retired into the pit lane. He's back out having done a repair, but Pfeffer, considering he had a 15-second penalty anyway, and I see it's now 30. He shouldn't have been causing issues with Tanitsa. And then he goes and puts Heinemann in the wall as well. I think race control really need to give him a big slap on the wrist for that.
Well, what are they going to do? Penalise a driver in this event, or does the penalty carry forward into the next event?
A bit of both, really, John, because yes, you can keep applying time penalties, but also, just as we have in real world GT racing, the stewards can apply penalty points. And like on your driving licence, if you get so many of those, then you could have to sit out a race. But also, they do reprimands, and if you have a third reprimand, that's a race ban. So it's up to the stewards to determine the severity of what they're seeing and apply the penalty. But under a totting up process, it is possible that not everybody we see today we will see next time out.
Interesting.
So, meantime, we have 16 minutes of the race to go. You're looking at number 996, which is Axel Petit, 23rd at Silverstone. And here he's running 17th in the Lexus, the AAA E-Sports car in the Tech 1 livery, carried here in the 24 hours. And he has got Patrick Selva behind him, so the championship leader in the larded up McLaren down in 18th place as they come over the timing line once again.
But of course, McLaren's having to carry that performance balance that just took the edge off. We heard Ben Barnacle talk about that in the pro race, that the car didn't quite dial in the way it did at Silverstone, and I suspect that's the same for Patrick Selva, running currently in 18th position.
And what about Niels Neujoks? He's just the other side of this battle, isn't he? In 16th place, he's the one up the road ahead of these two. So Neujoks a second back from Alexandre Vromont in his Lexus. There, look, you have Selva pulling to the inside line. There might be breaking news any moment because the FIA steward Richard Norbury is busy typing in the race director channel, so we might have news of somebody else in hot water as they're riding the curb. Goes Petit down towards Bruxelles now. And again, Ben, what we see on track is going to be somewhat different from the final order, given how many penalties. We were at Silverstone talking about how well behaved they've been, and they started off okay, but as the race has worn on, it's got a bit scrappier, hasn't it?
And I wonder whether that's to do with the lack of grip. I think they really are struggling in terms of race pace. It's just nowhere near where they would expect to be, and as the race progresses, they will lose grip on these tyres, and I wonder whether this is the issue. So here's on board with Tobias Pfeffer for a replay. He's way back.
I mean, that's he's entitled to get a penalty for that. I mean, he was so far behind the Ferrari, and he could have done more that contact. The Ferrari was taking its line, fully entitled to do so, and the Audi could have done a better job. The penalty is justified. It's a shame, because otherwise Pfeffer was not doing a bad job.
Well, the penalty that's just come through is for Axel Petit, that we were looking at a moment ago, and he is being given a penalty for causing a collision with Giorgio Simonini that Ben reported we had lost. So as yet, we're not seeing any more Tobias Pfeffer news, but when we do, we will inform. There's Ami Hosseini, he's 5th, then Benito is 6th. Capoccia, we haven't seen very much of, having fought his way back into the race lead. He is away and gone, just like the Audi that won the pro race in the hands of Lorenzo Marcucci, because now he's 7 seconds plus clear up the road. So now he's got away with a light car, well suited to this circuit, the Audi storming clear. Amir Hosseini hanging on to his 5th place in that Mercedes ahead of Enzo Benito, who is a second back, so not really close enough now to be able to make that move as they make the run up into the Les Combes sequence of corners once again.
No, it looks as if Benito's got the pace that he's got, and there's not a lot left in the tank. He can't do anything with Hosseini in the Mercedes, and these 3 cars that are running 5th, 6th and 7th are pretty much equal gap between all 3.
Number 240 you're looking at there, that's Alexandre Vromont with his Lexus, and Vromont is in 15th, going after Jack Keithley. So Bentley versus Lexus for 14th, again out of the points. But these two having a good fight as they drop downhill. Whereas Keithley's teammate Moreno Sirica has got away, hasn't he? I know he's penalised, but on track he's got away by 2.7 seconds, given that he was having to stave off the attack of Jack Keithley a few laps ago.
Yeah, but Keithley now going to be concerned whether the Lexus, got 12 minutes in this race remaining, and the Lexus, strong car, got good speed. We saw that car win back last year in Paul Ricard in 6 hours, and we know that that car is capable of taking on a Bentley and beating it, albeit that maybe the Bentley slightly beat itself in that race.
Well, there is Hosseini going through, still running in 5th place, but dropping away now from number 63, the Lamborghini in the hands of Kamil Frančák, the FFF eSports team car. Team, of course, that dominated real-world SRO GT racing last season. Up to the timing line once more comes Amir Hosseini. Look back there in 14th is Jack Keithley. And Alexandre Vromont has not given up yet. 11.5 minutes to go. Got to say the Bentley looks good in that colour scheme, doesn't it? But Vromont in the Lexus now, John, right there, ready to challenge.
Yes, I mean, this has been a bit of work going on, and Vromont is certainly closing down or keeping Keithley honest. Looks to show the nose, nothing to make an overtake, just to really frustrate Keithley, make him look backwards more than looking forward. But then he's got to be aware that Noyox is right on his tail. In fact, Noyox is the one that's going to maybe be the ultimate beneficiary of this three-car, three-way battle.
Plunging once more down through a Rouge then, up out of Radiant, ride the curb. Pit lane exit on the right-hand side, and now speed building. Getting a toe is Vromont, makes his move on the outside line of Jack Keithley. He's going to brake as late as he dares, going up towards Lecorme. He's on the outside line, the wrong line for the first bit, the inside line for the second part, but Jack Keithley's going to try and brave it out on the inside. They brush, up the curb goes Vromont, up the curb goes Keithley, and who's going to come through ahead? It is Vromont.
But what's for Noyox is the one that's going to be certainly taking one of the positions away.
Absolutely.
He's been sitting there and watching that going on, the Bentley and the Lexus battling away. Noyox sits back and thinks, well, I'll have a little bit of that action. I've got past the Bentley. That might be the more difficult of the two cars to pass. Now focus on the Lexus. That's what racing drivers should do. They should actually think when they're driving, and that was good driving.
So 2 down for Keithley, 1 up for Vromont, 1 up for Noyox out of all of this. And in fact, the way that Niels Noyox is going, could he have a go at the Lexus as well?
Exactly.
It's nothing, is it?
That's what I said. Of the 3 cars, it's Noyox is the one that I think is going to be the overall beneficiary of this balance. Having said that, a little bit loose and sort of wayward when he into Fagnes, but recovers. So keep an eye on Noyox. He wants to get onto the tail of the Lexus as quickly as possible and make another position.
All right, while they are on its hot, absolutely. Now, 26 is Yuri Petrochenko, keeping Will Tregurtha at bay. This is the 22nd and 23rd. Will Tregurtha, former GT4 champion in British GT, star of Ginetta Junior Racing, and a real world driver, taking on the sim experts. He reckons he's got it tougher than those in the pro race, and he's probably right. He's ahead of many of them, though. Chris Severt's behind him, Mike Nobel is behind him. He went so well at Monza. Don't forget, in the charity race that was won by the man that's 26, Arthur Camera. So some big names here, Ben, behind Will Tregurtha.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really impressed with Will. I'm still a little unsure as to why he ended up in this rather than the pro session, but he is showing well.
Round the outside, runs out of road, back up the inside. He's going to get mugged if he's not careful, because Chris Sever is up behind him now. Sever just with his nose in front as they go across the line. So yeah, Will Tregurtha had a good go, but it didn't quite pay out, did it? Now there is Niels Noyox, and he's dropped back, John, from Vromont. He's not quite as close as he needs to be. Can he do anything here in a straight line to bring down the gap?
Well, he has lost a little bit. He made the ground up initially when he got that position, but not been able to capitalise it. So he's got to be careful. The Lexus will want to come back. There's a Bentley one want to come back. The Lexus is the car he's pursuing. As we go back to this battle for Hosseini, Benito, and they've been more or less in the same situation in terms of positions. Half a second here, maybe 3/4 of a second, another lap. So in the same time, Hosseini has done again a great job of driving in a defensive means.
Well, right now, Amir Hosseini turns through the downhill left-hander of Speaker's Corner, and then down through the Piff Paff, and then now. The Cour Paul Frere ready to loop his way round towards the end of lap number 23. Capoccia 9 seconds clear up front over Al Sabti. There is Luca Locio's Porsche down in 21st place, under attack from Petrichenko and Sever, and then Tregurtha. So John, here, another battle raging on. Anything could happen out of this, couldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got 7 minutes of the race remaining. 4 cars basically all battling for that 21st position. I mean, 21st position, some drivers might say, professional drivers, not sim drivers, would say, well, you know, why make the effort? The point is, if you're a racing driver, professional or sim, you make the effort. And that's what we're seeing. Good racing going on all the way down through the field.
Now, Ben, what else need we to be monitoring apart from battles on track? Is there anybody else climbing up the order? Anybody else dropping back that we've not accounted for? What have you spotted?
Well, I'm quite impressed with Jaroslav Honzik. We haven't really spoken too much about him. He is a very, very well-known gamer because effectively he's kind of what we like to call influencer, in that he streams his races online. He's got a huge amount of following, and Jaroslav up in 12th position, so just outside the points. But he's been in all kinds of different races because these influencers get invited to everything. Side by side, Lamborghini versus Ferrari.
Santoro versus Tonizza, 8th place we're looking at, and where's the Ferrari gone? Over the curb and back on again, and Tonizza's going to gain the place, is he not? Yet, job done. Might be a track limits issue out of all of that.
I think he'll have a benefit. He overtook the place, hit it off racetrack. He's going to have to get that back, in my opinion. But this is tight, up the hill, 3 abreast, coming up into the Coombe.
And who's going to be the beneficiary out of all of this? Will Tregurtha's on the outside line. Luca Locio's Porsche stays ahead. And keep an eye to this, but let me just go back to another story from earlier on. Remember the Tobias Pfeffer contact against David Tonizza? Pfeffer has been warned for that, but no other penalty because he gave the position back. That's what the stewards have decided. So as he gave Tonizza the place back, no further action need to be taken. You're on board with Locio, heading downhill. John, plunging down to Pouan now.
Yeah, building speed up to 200 kilometres, 230 kilometres on the entry. Let the car run out wide, not that wide. As you see from, that's the Lexus of Serra. So, I mean, I don't quite understand the line he took coming down. He should have been more to the left of the racetrack than where he was, unless he was defending. He's got the other Lexus directly behind him. Maybe that was the reason why he was being slightly offline, being defensive.
Well, this is penalised Pfeffer. He's 10th on the road, looking at the back of Danilo Santoro's Lamborghini. There's only 4.5 minutes on the clock here as you ride back with Locio. The drive-through penalty has now come for number 46, which is the James Parker Mercedes, and there swooping ahead of Mrs. Will Tregurtha. So Tregurtha up into 23rd place now. Good move, that. Brave stuff.
Yeah, it was brave because half the car was off the racetrack. But anyway, nevertheless, he got the pass done and he's on his way.
Details, John, details.
No,
now,
I saw how wide he was coming into Porsche. I ever got round the corners beyond me.
Now, what about this Ferrari? Because yet again, Enzo Bonito is trying everything to get past Amir Hosseini. That Mercedes hasn't been the quickest car in this race, but he's made it as wide as it possibly can be.
Yep, I mean, Benito's ebbed and flowed and gotten close and had a look and never quite had the commitment to make it stick. So with the clock clocking down, it is going to be very much, well, you're going to have 1 or 2 opportunities in these closing laps, and that will be your chance, Mr. Benito.
Now, Benito will be aware that Pavlovsky is not that far behind him. There is Bonito. He's running in 6th place. Tobias Pfeffer is the first of those with a penalty, 10th on the road. 3 more minutes to go. This is lap 25. It's going to be about 27, isn't it, like it was for the Pro Series race, seemingly. In fact, Capoccia, the race leader, Hani Al Sabti, second. 2 drivers we've not seen too much of late, but both really having a great reversal of fortune after what befell them at Silverstone in the opening round of the championship. Next stop, Nürburgring, then it's Barcelona, and the final round, it's up to you to decide where we go, in a sense, because it's going to be a vote to decide the venue, and that will be announced in due course, ready for the showdown for the Silver and Pro Series in the SRO E-Sport GT Series.
I want to know what he would choose. We've got all of the intercontinental
hold on.
tracks.
Ben, do you want to know the circuit I would choose? It's probably not on the menu. I would choose Watkins Glen in Upper New York State.
What about
if it's going to be if it's going to be in Europe, then where can we go in Europe that would be exciting? That would really, really test the drivers. I mean, you've got places like Paul Ricard, which has got. If they took out the chicane at Paul Ricard and let them go flat out into scene, that would get my thumbs up.
Could work because that's part of the SRO Championship, so that's modelled on this game. We've got all the intercontinental tracks, all the Enduro and all the sprint tracks from last year, so there's plenty to choose from.
So I can't offer a vote for Bathurst or Macau. Is that what you're telling me?
Bathurst is on intercontinental, isn't it?
Okay, we'll put a vote in for that then. Right, Amir Hosseini's just lost a place. Benito's ahead of him as they run up towards Lecom, but Hosseini breaks late on the inside, forces
he is.
Benito's up the curb.
He's done it, he's gotten through. No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. Can't believe it. What? Been good again, good clean racing. Now down the inside, down into Brussels, down the outside, but the Lamborghini also looking, didn't find a way. Well,
proper racing.
1 minute,
proper
1 minute,
GT racing.
20-second race. It's all kicking off in this penultimate lap.
And look, now Bonito's still not given up because he's on the attack, he's on the defensive, he's crawling all over the back of Hosseini as they drop into Pouhon now. Through this long left-hander. Hosseini off the brakes, back on the power, tries to get the Mercedes to drag him out the other side. All of that grunt from the front engine, Mercedes AMG GT3. Got the 488 Ferrari closing up into the piff-paff, dab on the brakes there from Hosseini. Bonito tucked up behind him, looking for a way by now.
Well, Benito had it all done and dusted, we thought, but then silver nose of that Mercedes coming into Malmedy just came out in front. And it's not now just Benito and the Mercedes, you've got the Lamborghini also in the rear mirror, if not in the side mirror of the Ferrari, is the 7th place Lamborghini.
Mathematically, this must be the battle for the lead of the championship because these are the only two that have featured well up the field in both of our races so far.
I would go along with that, and they're going to get one more lap out of this, aren't they? Because the clock has yet to hit zero. The leader, Andrea Capoccia, should go through any moment. Here is Pfeffer, and he has gone through. You're right, there is Pfeffer on the attack of Santoro once more. So now the hour is up. They'll complete this lap. Capoccia is on his last lap. It's going to be 27 laps once more. But the good news is that Hosseini and Bonito have got one more lap, one more tour of the circuit for this slugfest for 5th place here. Looking back now, John, from the Mercedes.
So here we go, down the hill for the last racing lap of 1 hour of racing into Eau Rouge, over the curb, swing to the right, up over the top of Radio, car gets light, everybody stays on racetrack, nobody gains anything, nobody loses anything, but the Ferrari is coming again, and again, and again, pulls out to the left, carries the momentum forward, but the Mercedes has got the high ground, in other words, has got the inside going into Lake Coombe. Can Benito this time manage? Yes, he has. He's managed to get that position from Hosseini finally. And just about, because the Lamborghini Podolski is also all over the back of the Mercedes, down the outside into Brussels. Can he take the long way around and make it work? 2 places in 1 lap, maybe too much for Hosseini. He's got a little bit of contact, but then nothing to worry about.
Well, great racing. What a way to round out round 2 of the championship. Amir Hosseini loses out, and Benito straight away disappears up the road. It makes you wonder what he could have done had he got past sooner, but Hosseini's spirited defence comes to nothing. He makes a mistake and he runs out wide. Now Pavlovsky should be on the attack. He's got the momentum as they come down towards the piff-paff. He's going to have a look to the outside line. Hosseini covers him off, but Pavlovsky here, Ben, could yet get 6th before the end, couldn't he?
See Triple F being represented here, effectively the Works Lamborghini team really trying to find a way through at the end of the race, fighting every single second of this hour-long adventure, and another really great one from Hosseini, who's managed to pick up some decent points despite really not having the race pace totally.
Now you can see on the totem pole a minute worth of penalties now for Pfeffer for assaulted incidents. We'll worry about the final results in due course because Capoccia has taken the checkered flag to win round 2 of the SRO E-Sport GT Series. 2nd, Hani Al-Sabti. 3rd, De Salvo. 4th, Franchak. And then it's going to be Bonito for 5th in the Ferrari, but who will be 6th? Hosseini powers towards the line. Is he going to hang on in there just ahead of Pavlovsky? The answer is yes, he does. So it is 6th for Hosseini. Pavlovsky takes 7th. Tonitsa 8th. Santoro takes 9th. And Pfeffer 10th on the road, but give him a minute's penalty, and that throws him probably to about last place, I would imagine. So it is a win for Andrea Capoccia. Hani Al-Sabti takes 2nd. 3rd place goes the way of Giovanni De Salvo. 4th to Camille Franchak. Enzo Benito 5th, having been 7th at Silverstone. 6th, Amir Hosseini, having been 5th at Silverstone. 7th, Kamil Pavlovsky. 8th place goes the way of David Tonitsa after a spin. 9th, Danilo Santoro. And 10th, when you start to put the penalties into the mix, it is Jaroslav Honchik in the Lamborghini. Well, we said it was going to be dramatic, and plenty of evidence to back up that. As I say, the next stop is going to be the Nürburgring, then Barcelona, and then get your thinking caps on for the venue that you can vote for the final round of the championship. But Andrea Capoccia did a great job in the race-winning car. And 1 minute, 49.925 seconds, 27 laps he did, 11.4 seconds clear of everybody else. It's been a great day for Audi with wins in both races, but of course that means that it will therefore give the cars extra weight going into the next race within the championship, because if you're in the top 3, the brand carries weight, so 25 kilos will be applied to every Audi in each of the 2 championships going into the next race at the Nürburgring, because of the success they've had today. So we'll have a chance in a few moments to hear from 1 or 2 of the drivers at the end of some fabulous racing as expected here at Spa. And having been watching all of this from his berth in the caster's room is Jack Nicholls, and we said, Jack, it was likely that we were going to have yet another jumbled result. Well, that's exactly what we delivered, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great race. Really entertaining stuff at the front. That fight between Al-Sabdi and Capoccia for the win was absolutely thrilling. But in the end, it is Andrea Capoccia who comes out on top, takes the win. And those 25 points bring him level at the top of the championship with Patrick Selva, who won the first race at Silverstone, because Selva not scoring any points in this race today at Spa. So those 2 are tied at the top of the championship, and then it's 6 points back to David Tonitsa, who, getting that 5th place right at the end there, promoted him in the points above Arthur Camara, who drops to 4th place. So Tonitsa really the only driver to score decent points in both races. Amir Hosseini did well. He's still in the sort of top 5 in the championship, but not quite as many points as David Tonitsa. So we're really seeing, I think, and the same is kind of true with Luigi Di Lorenzo in race 1 in the pro class, that consistency is going to be the key.
Keep out of trouble, score points. It's, as you and I were discussing, an hour or so ago, it's a short championship, relatively speaking. So you don't have many opportunities to score points, A, because you have to be in the top 10, and B, because you've only got 5 races in which to do it. So you can't really afford bad results, whether that's low points or out of the points. Keep out of trouble, score well, bank where you can.
And Watty, presumably that's sort of easier said than done, isn't it? That kind of attitude.
Well, if you're a real-time racing driver, what would you expect? No, listen. Whether... Okay, you've got interviews coming up, so I'll leave my speech until we've heard from the race winner.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. We'll start off then with Hani Al-Sabti, shall we? We've got him joining us in for an interview. Hani, congratulations, a 2nd place. You happy with that? You had the lead for quite a while, the first 15 minutes or so.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy with 2nd place. I knew I couldn't keep up with Audi, so it was either getting damaged or letting him go, and I decided to let him go and stay in 2nd and try to maintain the gap to P3 and P4.
And that'll obviously give you a bit of ballast for the next race in the Nürburgring. Are you worried about that? How is the Lexus with the weight penalties?
Well, the Lexus is not really a fast car, except on Spa. So on the next track, the car is already slow, and with ballast, it's just way too slow. But anyway, hopefully it will rain, then we might have a chat.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, Haney. David, anything to add, Haney?
No, just a very impressive drive and a great result after Silverstone. I mean, you must be very, very pleased with that. 2 very differing results. Dramas at Silverstone, really good pace today.
So let's move on then to Kamil Franchak, shall we? Kamil, good afternoon. Starting third, finishing in the top 10, a decent race for you.
Hi, thank you. I think it's even better than decent race. I started P3. As you've probably seen, I had some very hot moments in the first, I guess, 2 laps with Amir Hosseini. But luckily, I've seen it in the mirror, so did some avoid action, and I kept it on track. So could regain the position after a couple of laps and try to catch up back to gain the 3rd position. But I needed like maybe 10 minutes or so, and I would be close. But still, 4th place, I think, is a great result, especially on this track, which is not easy.
Yeah, good points for the championship. Are you looking forward to Nürburgring next week?
And as far as I know, we're gonna have 10 kilo ballast, so it's not gonna be easy for us. Lambo is very good car, but not easy to set up. So we will have now difficult week trying to prepare for this race. But I'm looking forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, Kamil Franchak there. Thank you very much. Enzo Benito we have as well, the Ferrari driver. Enzo, you and David scoring points in, David Tanitza, your teammate, scoring points in both races. So good consistency from Ferrari, even if you're not right at the front.
Oh yeah, absolutely. David did great job in Silverstone. He got P3, so now we had 10 kilos of ballast. It's not much, but I think 1 of 2 tenths was worth it. But yeah, it's been great for us so far. I know Spa was a little bit better than Silverstone, but shame for what happened to David in the race. Got spun, I think, and could have scored more points. But yeah, we're happy with that.
Okay, and how much difference does it make that you've only got 1 week now till the Nürburgring compared to 2 weeks from Silverstone? Is it much more difficult to get everything ready?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we won't have the ballast this time, so I'm not sure. I never tried the Nürburgring myself, but yeah, every day practicing, I guess, and see what we can.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Enzo. Catch you later.
Thank
And
you,
we'll now move on to Kamil Pawlowski, who's in the chat as well. Kamil, talk us through your race. How was it for you?
The race was very decent. I mean, I was very unhappy with my qualifying because I have qualified on P15, so really away from P10 from scoring the points. But the race was brilliant. I gained so many positions throughout the whole race and avoided some contacts, some accidents in front of me. So in the final, in the end, P7, I will take it. I'm very happy with that.
Okay, congratulations. See you at Nürburgring next week.
Thank you.
So, as you like last week, David, the racing drivers sounding more like racing drivers than the racing drivers, the sim racers, I should say.
I know what you meant. Yes, but again, the point is, and we touched on this with Ben Barnicoat, didn't we, earlier? They're taking this very seriously. This is a proper championship with proper people in it, and they all want to win. And that's that racing driver element that John was touching on. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a sim or the real world. You want to win, and you want to be as good as you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Constantiouris, your closing thoughts from today. What are you made of the action in the 2-hour races?
It was really interesting to see how the different conditions kept the kind of the playing field relatively level in terms of time, and 2 very, very entertaining races, and a huge progress, I think, from our pro drivers in adapting to this and driving more and more sensibly and providing us with even greater action.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still waiting for that rain, though, aren't we? To properly come.
They've got to do it. They've got to show off how the game is able to do things that other games are not. So they have to have some event where rain will come, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Watty, we had some interviews earlier while you were telling us about how to be a consistent racing driver.
Well, I think what's interesting is listening to the sim drivers and realizing that they're racing in effect as professional race drivers, albeit they are not professional race drivers. The key to any of these events is always going to be continuity and consistency. You've got to qualify well also, because it is difficult to make your way through these large fields with GT3 cars that are so equally matched. But ultimately, today was a day dominated by one manufacturer. The other thing that I note, and I think this is something which may have a bearing on the remaining 3 rounds, is that the weight penalties appear to have a more significant effect than the actual weight in itself would do. So it does appear to be something that's knocking back. I mean, what will happen at Nürburgring next weekend if the Audis win, as they did here conclusively? then we'll have to reassess weight. But maybe if they're the mid-pack or the end of the field, maybe the weight could be readjusted slightly less punitively.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that over the final 2 rounds then. So the championship leaders after the SRO E-Sport GT Series round 2 at Spa, Lorenzo Marcucci, the race winner, and then in the pro class, and that moves him to the top of the championship on 27 points. And then in the silver class, we've got Andrea Capoccia, who takes the victory and moves joint top of the standings there with Patrick Selva ahead of the race at the Nürburgring, which is coming up in a week's time. So make sure you join us for that. Just a little back-to-back weekend, and then it'll be a 2-week break before, as David says, the final round. I'm up for Bathurst, actually. I think that's a really good idea, David.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So we've all agreed. When you guys get the chance to have your say, vote for Bathurst. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you to do that, but there we go. We're sport for choice, aren't we, David? Because there's so many great tracks in that. That's my favourite thing, I think, about the GT World Challenge powered by AWS in the sprint and the endurance. It's just classic race circuits, which I love going to.
I do like what he's thought also of Watkins Glen, because I know that is another good old school circuit. So that's certainly worth a vote. But
you can't have that, David.
Oh,
not allowed.
The guys have got time to develop it. They've got time to develop it for the future, Ben.
If can we then think about maybe going to Suzuka as an alternative? Bathurst is a brilliant circuit. What about Suzuka? The 130R.
Still think Macau would sort them out. Anyway. On Twitter or on social media through other channels, you can offer your thoughts and let us know. See.
We're looking at a replay here of some of the chaos that we saw in the early stages down at the bus stop chicane, and this is where we thought the sim racers might be a little bit better behaved, but it all kind of kicked off, didn't it?
Well, that's pretty rude, I tell you. A lot of cars getting involved unnecessarily, but then, it is sim racing, it isn't live.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a look at the replay of the start. Thank you very much for joining us for the second round of the SRO Esports GT Series from here at Spa. As we say, in a week's time, we will be back with you at the Nürburgring. So we are very much looking forward to that and getting on with the next race. And then the final race, will it be Bathurst? Will it be Suzuka? Will it be, Watkins Glen? How's that? That's what it should be known as.
I tell you what, any of our team, go there. You will have the best time of your life. All you have to go and see at Watkins Glen is the infamous bog. Reputations were made and broken at Watkins Glen.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
No. Oh, Jack, come on.
I don't know.
Watkins Glen, Google it. The infamous
the bog. Okay.
It was the Woodstock of Formula One. Do you know what Woodstock is?
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that was the Woodstock of Formula One.
Okay. Thank you for that. Right. So, again, thank you very much for joining us at the SRO E-Sport GT Series, the second round. We will leave you now. Thank you very much for your company over the last couple of hours. 2 really great 1-hour GT races from David Addison, from John Watson and his bog, and from Ben Constanduris, and from myself, Jack Nichols. It's been a pleasure being with you, and we'll see you in 1 week's time for round 3 of the SRO Esport GT Series at the Nürburgring. See you then.